All right, we are officially live and welcome to day one of the DATAcated Conference, February 2021. Super excited to have you here today. My name is Kate Strachnyi. I'm the founder of StoryByData.com, DATAcated Academy, and more recently, the DATAcated Conference, and I'll be your host for the next 3 days. All right, so we are going live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So let us know where you're tuning in from. Hopefully all those platforms are going live and you guys are able to join and see everything. We actually had the first DATAcated conference in October of last year, had such an amazing time. It was a one-day event that we decided to do it for the next 3 days, right? So we blew up the event times 3. Really, really excited to have all of our speakers here today. I want to get started just with some thank yous, right? So I want to make sure that I thank our sponsors, DataRobot, ThoughtSpot, and Pyramid Analytics for really supporting this event. We couldn't do this without you. Definitely want to give a shout out to all of the great media partners and community members. We've got Lights on Data, KD Nuggets, Data Literacy, DATAcated Academy, Data Science Infinity, Business Science, Team Data Science, Story by Data, Super Data Science, The Ravit Show, and of course, Pact. All right. We could not have done this without our amazing speakers. You're going to hear from so many different people with different backgrounds in different industries over the next 3 days that I truly, truly can't wait. Most importantly, this would not happen without you in the audience, right? We would have all this set up, and if you guys are not here to watch this, it's all kind of pointless. So I'm really excited that everyone is joining right now. I see the comments flying in. I'm trying not to look. I will get distracted. But I'm really excited that I see people joining the session and really hoping that you get the value out of this. Before I bring on our keynote speaker for the day, I definitely want to quickly remind you that if you have not signed up officially and if you have not registered on Story by Data's website, to please go ahead and do that, because that will actually enable you to get virtual goodies, giveaways, you'll get the recordings, and you'll get a full post-conference behind-the-scenes blog post. And yeah, you don't want to miss this. This is basically, we will tell you everything you need to know about running your own conference. All right, at this point, I'm going to introduce our first keynote speaker, Ben Taylor, and he's going to kick things off for day one. On day one, we're basically focused on extracting business value from data. All of the speakers, I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen one more time to show you the talks that you can expect to see for today, along with the times. This is in Eastern time. The talks you're going to hear from today are all 10-minute segments with 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A with each speaker. So I definitely encourage you to ask as many questions and leave comments, because we're going to address as many as we possibly can in this short time frame. So our first speaker is Ben Taylor. I'm going to go ahead and introduce him and then bring him on stage. He's going to talk about the hunt for transformational value with AI. Ben is the chief AI evangelist at DataRobot and has over 16 years of machine learning experience. He studied chemical engineering, worked at Intel and Micron, worked at a hedge fund as a quant, was the chief data scientist for HireVue, and co-founded and more recently sold a deep learning auto ML company called Zeph to DataRobot. All right, without further ado, here's Ben. Hello, welcome to day one.
I'm so excited to be here, and I think you're doing something amazing, and it's really fun to see this evolve. So I'll jump into my talk, and with the platform that Kate has set up, I can see your comments. So please, please engage, and I will. Oh yeah, what were you gonna say, Kate?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, before I hop off and let you take it away, I just want to remind people, commenting can get you some cool DataRobot swag. So we are doing a giveaway, so ask questions, engage, and at that point, I'm going to hop off. See you soon.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Okay, the hunt for transformational AI. I think I'm going to start this talk a little different than other talks I've given. I'm going to start with a love story. So back when I was 20, I remember hitchhiking to Reno to see my girlfriend, who's now my wife. We've been married for 17 years. And hitchhiking has a lot of risks, and so does building models and putting models into production. And a brief story about one of the risks that I was maybe naive to. The first trip out to Reno, the sun was setting. There was desperation to get there. I really just had to finish this trip. And I got into a truck with 2 strangers, and the driver and the passenger, I don't know what they were on, but they were on a variety of things that impaired them. So the person next to me, I think during the trip across the Utah desert heading to Wendover, I think he introduced himself to me 5 times. So he'd look over and see me in surprise. And then the other thing about these two people, they picked me up hitchhiking. They started to ask if they could sleep at my place. So they started to say, please, can we crash on the floor? We won't eat out of the fridge. And I had to keep reminding them that I'm a hitchhiker. You picked me up. I have no place. I'm going to Reno. And this experience was probably, you're young, you're dumb, you haven't really experienced the world yet, you're learning. But just like this experience probably being a little reckless, luckily nothing happened, nothing where I have to pay the consequences for it. Got there safely, no one was harmed. But just like that, with building models, we have unintended consequences. And I like to kind of see the world this way, where you start with experimental AI that becomes incremental. And the goal of this talk is to get people really excited about transformational AI. So this is me. This is me in 2008. I'm a junior data scientist. I'm really excited to go out and see the world. And I'm a little bit naive. And I go get my first job at IM Flash. And I'm naive to some of these threats. And so some of the threats that I haven't personally experienced yet at that time, or the idea of a useful model, a model that can outlive me, outlast me, that can be owned by someone else, that can be owned by engineering. Feature drift is a scary thing that I'm not familiar with. A model that's working well for 1 month, 2 month, 3 month can suddenly go off the rails and cause catastrophic outcomes. And then bias, that's also something I'm unfamiliar with. I can build a model that can amplify sexism, racism, ageism, or another type of bias. I don't really understand that. But the scariest thing, this is my son, by the way, with the Dumb and Dumber bangs, eating Red 40. This is the scariest thing of all, especially after the Red 40 has been consumed. Target leakage. So anyone who's been a more seasoned data scientist, there's been a point in their life where they've celebrated 99% accuracy, or this model is going to change the world. And then they go and they present that to their executive team, or even worse, they put it into production and they get burned. It's not as good as they said it was. And so I've definitely been there. I've definitely built models where I've had features coming into the model, like a churn model, and there's a feature coming in called customer color, and it allows me to get 99% accuracy. But it turns out the customer color is essentially a churn identifier, something that I'm not thinking about. So there's this clumsy gap between subject matter experts and data scientists that are hitting the ground running, and they run into these issues. But I'm going to tell you a story, one of my first hard lessons that I learned in production, where I was working here. This is IM Flash. This room is called the $1 billion room. It's where they have all their photolithography. So I spent at least a full year of my life in this room, working night shift, listening to music, wearing the white ninja suit. And there's a lot of different departments in this fab. And there was a particular tool called a chemical mechanical planarization tool, where it was throwing a stone. And this became a very, very big deal because it was costing millions of dollars. They couldn't troubleshoot it. They had vendors on site trying to figure this out. And the urgency rose to the point where this was the highest priority in the fab, that we have to predict when the tool is going to throw this stone. And maybe being a young buck and someone that has, some ego in the game, I want to prove myself. It eventually rose to the point that it got my attention, even though it's not in my department. And I became pretty excited, where I felt like this was happening. So this is what I'm thinking. The fab manager, they need a hero. They need a data hero. So just like Bonnie Tyler here, this is the fab manager. That's me on the piano. I'm getting pretty excited. I've got some data science. Haven't really applied much of it. And I'm going to jump in. I'm going to be the hero and go after this. I'm going to tell you what happened. So I'm so excited to be the hero and to save this tool set from the stone that's being thrown. And so I take a very aggressive approach, and I pull in all the data that I can possibly get my hands on. So we're talking spin speed, voltages. It's very complicated. So I'm just taking this aggressive basket approach. I'm pulling in all this data, and I train a model. And the model is attempting to predict when the stone will be thrown. And I remember getting the model in production. There's a lot of excitement. Is this actually going to help us? Because nothing's been helping us. And I go home. And just like a good story, that the first night it was deployed at 3 a.m, my model starts paging technicians on the floor. And so this black box model that no one can understand, that has so many features and no storytelling attached, is paging technicians that a particular tool is going to throw a stone. And the technicians are looking at the tool, it's not throwing the stone. And this is, so from their perspective, it's a false positive. And there's a lot of frustration that they don't understand it. So they're kind of, what the hell is this alarm? I don't know what it's doing. The stone's not thrown. And so they ignore the alarm. And then in 30 minutes, the tool throws the stone. And so when I came back into work the next day, I felt validated. I felt like, see, you should have listened to me. My model was amazing. In hindsight, many years later, this was an epic fail on my part. So you have false positives that the technicians are very sensitive to, and then you have false negatives that the manager team was very sensitive to, and you have two groups that you have to appeal to. But the thing that was missing here was the storytelling. I was still in the experimental phase. I lacked the tools I needed to tell a story, to convince people that this model was working, but to troubleshoot it if it wasn't. And just like experience capture through iterations and mistakes, at DataRobot, we've made plenty of mistakes in the past with customers and just with individuals that work at the company, but we've been able to roll that experience into an A to Z end-to-end AI platform, where a lot of those mistakes, like target leakage, model drift, parallel model deployment, and just deploying a model at all, has been automated in a way that you can do things very, very quickly in a few hours that used to take many days, many months, or even things that were impossible, like this house price prediction model. So for anyone that's curious, I'd encourage you to scan this QR code and go take a look at this short video demo of building a house price prediction model using images, text, and structured data, and doing it very quickly. So despite all of the value that we get from experience capture, where we're standing on the shoulders of giants, 75% of all AI projects fail. The majority of fail. And they fail for funny reasons. Some of them can fail because it's a lack of technical expertise, on a lack of experience, like the example I brought up, where maybe I haven't experienced bias or I haven't experienced feature drift yet. But a lot of projects fail because they picked the wrong project. So I want to quiz you guys, and I'm going to be looking at comments. So I'd love for this to be interactive. I'm going to show you 3 AI projects, and I want you to determine which of these was transformational and which of these didn't justify the effort. And so I know most of the people who are listening are data scientists, but let's put on your manager hat to kind of understand the business value. So the first project, say we're insurance and we can predict if the type of roof from a satellite image, or whether or not a pool is present on a property. So think of this as swimming pools from space. Can I look at an image and determine if there's a swimming pool? Because having a swimming pool increases the liability for a home, and this is something that we'd want to know during the auditing. So this is the first use case. And then the second use case, the QR code was for the demo. Someone just asked that. So this one is a large e-commerce store, and can I use AI to add attributes to images? So users are uploading images, and I want to know if it's a sweater, I want to know if it's a scarf. This will help the process of checking images and getting them into the platform faster. So this is the use case number 2. We'll call this the cute sweaters AI use case. And then use case number 3 is I want to use AI to look at influencers and know what the brand placement is. Because a lot of influencers, if you may not know, they are being paid to promote Coke or their brands on their profiles, and some of them are paid a lot of money. So out of those 3 use cases, swimming pools from space, cute sweaters, holding a Coke, which of the 3 was transformational for that company? And which of the 2 were not? So this is kind of a trick question. And the trick question is all 3 of these companies had transformational AI projects, but not the ones that I showed you. So we're going to go back and review. So swimming pools from space did not justify the work needed. It sounds really cool, and that's something you definitely want to be worried about. You don't want to work on a project that sounds cool. You want to work on a project that adds transformational value. And so the transformational value In the thing I want to tease out here is we can all agree that swimming pools from space is worth more than zero, but we can't agree on what that number is. Is it worth 10,000 a year? Is it worth 100,000 a year? It's definitely not worth millions a year, even if you had a superhuman swimming pool detector. But there is something that is worth millions and tens of millions a year, and that is loss prediction. So being able to build a model to improve loss prediction on a property is worth transformational value if done well. And for this example, this is also, we can only agree that this is worth more than zero. We might be able to get into some human time saved, but the issue that people run into with this type of problem is they don't have the data quality. They haven't invested the human labeling, and this becomes a massive project for them to go after. And when you look at the total value, it's hard to justify the value of this project. But click-through rate for e-commerce, if you improve click-through rate by a very small fraction, that is transformational for a company. For a large e-commerce company, product recommendations and click-through rate going to purchase can translate to tens of millions of dollars. And then the last one, product placement. This is interesting. It's worth more than zero, but predicting influencer engagement and finding smaller influencers is a transformational change. So if I can go find influencers where before it required humans to review very large influencers with tens or hundreds of millions of followers, if I can find the influencers with 1,000 followers, that is transformational. It allows me to compete in a market, in a space that no other company can compete unless they have AI. So the thing I want to end in, I want to open it up for live questions. So this is a podcast that I'm a co-host on, where we interview fascinating people that are on the front lines doing very innovative things at scale with high consequence with AI. So the podcast is called The More Intelligent Tomorrow. You can scan the QR code to go find it and take a listen. We've got Chris Mattman. He's the CTO at JPL, NASA. And Chris Lynch is the CEO at AtScale. We have some fantastic people. Shamik here, he was the CDO of Standard Chartered Bank. So you can hear their perspectives and experience as they've had wins and failures in their careers. And then lastly, for anyone that wants to follow me, this will get you to my LinkedIn. And this is my email. If you have any questions or if you want to follow up directly, please reach out. I want to make sure that you guys are successful. So I'm going to change it over to just live Q&A. And Kate can keep me honest here. I think we have a few more minutes. Yeah, so I'm. That's
hey, Ben.
it. Hey, Kate.
Awesome. Yes, we do have time for Q&A, and I've got a bunch of questions flying in, really. It's hard to even keep track of them. But before we go to the questions, first, thank you so much for that presentation. Really insightful. I love the use of QR codes. Not seen that used at least in my conference just yet. So I think that was really, really cool and innovative. I'm sure people are probably missing it because it was going so fast. So just if you want to see those QR codes again, you can just watch the recording after the fact and use your phone to capture that. 2, your son is adorable. That's almost cheating using him in your presentation. That's awesome. And 3 was, I had a question. You mentioned that I guess over 75% of AI projects fail. Is there one thing that we can do that can at least slightly reduce that crazy failure rate?
Yeah, so the best thing you can do is fail before you start. And by fail before you start, determine what's the feasibility and what's the value to the company. And I think some people get hung up or trapped in knowing the exact value. And the thing I want to kind of open the door on is you can make a lot of assumptions. So if you're trying to determine the value of a project, like, I don't know, can you guess if the value is worth 100,000, a million, and 5 million? And can you just come up with assumptions to come up with that number? It doesn't have to be exact, but you're trying to kind of just find order of magnitude. Feasibility is a very scary thing because people can go after the skyscraper of AI projects, or, we always recommend crawl, walk, run, get that walking win. And then when you kind of have wins under your belt, then maybe go after something more ambitious. But a lot of people, they chase the shiny toy and they go after the most ambitious project, and it just doesn't get done. So I appreciate that question.
All right, you ready for some live Q&A? I'm going to try to take as many as we can. Okay, first one from Amir. How can we accelerate our learnings to deliver transformational results through our projects?
So a big part is collaboration, because different people on the team have made different mistakes. So how can you capture those mistakes? You can also capture mistakes from communities. So working with other data scientists in your local communities, you can figure out common mistakes they've had. We actually want to start a new podcast where it's just focused on failures. So data scientists that are willing to come and talk about the oh no moments or the oh crap or the things they regret. And the hope there is to help people learn from other people's experience, because that's how we all learn.
I'm already thinking of names for your Oh Crap podcast.
Yeah.
That would be funny. Awesome. Thanks for that. Question from Matthew here. Ben, how would you recommend people get a handle on the business side of these data projects other than failing your way to success? Is there a way to study use cases?
I love this question, Matthew. Good to see you, by the way. And business, that's really hard. So I was very clumsy here. I had poor business acumen, and I remember butting heads with HireVue's executive team where I couldn't communicate. And so some quick recommendations. I know as a data scientist, the temptation is there to explain all your work. Don't explain all your work, especially to an audience that doesn't appreciate it. Get to the point. If you took 3 or 4 iterations to get to success, don't review the iterations. Just talk about the success and try to make sure you don't use words they don't understand. So my recommendation is pretend like you're talking to your mother or father, and avoid all data science jargon. And if you have to show them one thing, show them a number with a dollar sign. And you can explain that. So if they disbelieve the number, you can explain how you got there. I've made plenty of mistakes by showing AUC charts to executives and trying to explain what they mean, and that's a train wreck. So I think the last thing I'll add is a business has a sense of urgency, and some data science teams don't. So I've definitely worked on teams where I'm much more concerned about, are you happy? Don't leave the company. How are you doing? Where there's a little bit more flexibility, but from the business perspective, there's a lot of urgency. Like having a job is not necessarily a luxury from the employer's perspective. They need a return on that job.
Yeah.
But I think data scientists, they don't realize the scary market that we live in. You have to be producing a return on your efforts for your employer.
Yeah, absolutely. There were actually a lot of similar questions about how do you pitch this to leadership, but I think we'll move on because you covered all of that really well. So question from Bavuk. What are the common mistakes data science people or data scientists do or make while selecting and understanding AI projects?
I think they overcomplicate them. They bring kind of an academic mindset. They want to do something that would impress their peers. One of the things I like to say is if you have 0 models in production, a Bayesian method will get you 80% of the value tomorrow. And so why are you reading white papers and trying to come up with, deep learning? Finally, everyone wants to apply deep learning, and sometimes it's not the best tool for that use case. So definitely bring a sense of urgency. And what's the 1 week or 2 week scenario? I think that's a common mistake, that data scientists roll up their sleeves to work on something that they can impress other data scientists on, and they're missing the quick win. So think of version 1, version 2. Too many data scientists start with version 2. What's version 1? Start with version 1 and just be quick about it.
Yeah, I think it goes back to human nature, right? We want to chase the shiny objects. We want to do the complicated things. We want to do deep learning on something that doesn't need it. Humans, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Great question here from Lily. Wish we started with this one. How do you define failure in this context?
I love this question, Lily. It's actually a very complicated question, because sometimes failure is necessary to learn what's required to solve the bigger problems. And so it's fine to fail if you're learning lessons that are useful, but it's not fine to fail if you're reinventing the wheel based on ego or based on tuition or based on a selfish need to improve your market security. And so we see that a lot, where people will try to they'll try to build something from scratch that is already well known and well understood. And so I think to kind of get to the point of the question, how do you define failure? I would say failure is an excessive investment in a project that doesn't map to value. It's fine if you're brainstorming, if you're trying to figure out a project, if you can fail in a few days or fail in a week, that's not really a failure. You're kind of saving time. But if you invest 3 months, 4 months, 6 months on a project, and if it doesn't go to completion, then that is a devastating failure. And you need to ask yourself, why weren't you able to fail sooner?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a last comment and then a last question for you. Comment from Cindy. She says, crawl, walk, run. Sage advice from Ben Taylor, rather than chasing the shiny objects and projects. So thanks, Cindy. Cindy's here. She's keynoting tomorrow, so you'll catch her. And then a follow-up question from kind of that comment is from Thomas, who's still crawling but wants to walk in AI. So how does he walk in AI?
I think I love that question, by the way. We are standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think that's so funny because if you talk to people in the industry that have gray in their hair or in their beard, they'll groan thinking about how hard things used to be. Like before Docker, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have no idea how hard it used to be. But this is also true in data science. So make sure that you're using the latest tool sets where you can do amazing things in a few lines of code. So the other thing I'll say is there's always concerns when people are starting out about foundation gaps and how do you fix those foundation gaps. So a good recommendation I have is to follow people that you think can keep you up to date. But the best thing to do is get a book. So get a data science book and kind of go cover to cover. I always recommend that people destroy the book. So if you're buying a book, get a paper book and destroy it. Have a pen, have a marker, make that book so terrible that no one would ever want to buy it from you. And you'll learn something along the way. You'll actually fill in gaps in the foundation.
That's interesting that you say that. I actually bought my very first data storytelling book from Cole. Is so messed up, I can't even open it without pages falling out because it's so overused from 6 years ago. Yes.
And I would say the efficiency of that knowledge transfer to you is much higher than if you had been on a PDF copy.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So Ben, thank you so much for your presentation. I know we're going to hear from you again shortly, but at this point, thank you. We're going to keep this data party moving with our next speaker, and we'll see you soon.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kate.
All right. So our very next speaker is the data whisperer, Scott Taylor. So Scott Taylor has helped countless companies by enlightening business executives to the strategic value of proper data management. So he's got a new book out called Telling Your Data Story. It's data storytelling for data management. And we're gonna showcase that book a little bit more because we are doing a giveaway. This conference is all about giving back to the community. And yes, we have a lot of books and courses to give away. So definitely keep on commenting and engaging. Scott's an avid business evangelist and original thinker. He continuously shares his passion for the value of data management through industry events, speaking opportunities such as this. He's got blogs, white papers, podcasts, cartoons, puppet shows. Yes, he has a data management puppet show. He's probably the only one in the world who does that. He lives in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where he likes kayaking in Black Rock Harbor, and he can juggle pins and blow a square bubble. I always love saying this. Scott, I'm going to go ahead and bring you up on stage. I noticed you're drinking coffee there. Nice mic.
Wow, what an intro. Kate, how are you? I'm so excited to be. I got my shirt on.
DATAcated, of course, right there. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Scott. I know I'm going to hop off soon, but I want to remind people to ask you questions and leave comments for a chance to win your book. I know how hard you worked on getting this book out there, and it's really great. So I'm going to hop off and let you take it away with the 8 of data.
I want to thank you, Kate, for having all us Taylors on in alphabetical order. First Ben, then me. Next year, I'm changing my name to Andy, by the way.
Yes.
So, or Aardvark. I'll go with Aardvark. So get me
Aardvark. Right. You can't beat that one.
Taylor. I'll be first. Just, we can deal with it later. But thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here. Hi, everybody. Can I share? There we go. Share my screen. Kate, can you make me the big one? I am here to talk to you about the 8 of data value. Ben was talking about how complicated things can be. I try and make it as simple as possible. So there are 8 ways I have seen companies, enterprises, people get value out of data. And I'm going to share them all with you and help you kind of direct and focus your data science activity toward bringing value to your enterprises. As Kate said, and thank you, Kate. Kate's the first 8, the first unofficial 8, which rhymes with great. This is my favorite picture of Kate here with this book that she hasn't destroyed yet. Lots of people get in the book. Hopefully they will all destroy it in the way Ben suggested, but check out the book, Telling Your Data Story, Data Storytelling for Data Management. And as it's actually the #1 data book in performing arts, according to Amazon bestsellers, because through some sort of AI classification process, I am ranking 193 in performing arts. Hey, I'll take it. So that makes it the #1 data book in performing arts. And of course, Bernie realized and loved the fact that it is 99% buzzword free. That's a guarantee I can guarantee. Too many buzzwords in this space out here. You want to try and clear the buzzwords. Let me start with a couple right away that aren't buzzwords. Data is about truth and meaning. Determine the truth and then derive meaning. It's not chicken or egg here. It is egg and omelet. You got to do truth first before you do meaning. I'm a truth guy, obviously, hence the meaning of my truth hat. Some of you have noticed. When I say that, I mean things like data management is the way you determine the truth in data. Business intelligence in all its iterations, data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all the rest of that, that's how you derive meaning. But you got to do truth first. Data governance, data management, data stewardship, master data, metadata, reference data, MDM, RDM, PIM, all those great things that make sure you've got that foundation and you can avoid some of that munging and wrangling work that all you data scientists are always complaining about. Let's stamp out munging in our lifetime, shall we? The reason people want to use data, the reason enterprises exist is to provide value to your relationships through your brands at scale. At scale. Scale's where data comes in. Scale's where technology comes in. Can't have technology with hardware, software, data. You can't have data without data management. But think about the value you bring to your organization and point it at the most important things that your organization has, which are relationships and brands. Keep that in mind. Fill in the blanks on your own side if you like. What are your relationships? What are your brands? How do they provide value? I can go a whole lot deeper here, but I only have about like 7 minutes left. So the 8 8s of data value, let's roll them right now, shall we? The first one is relate. I said relationships. Every business wants to relate. You want to build relationships. You want to grow relationships. You want to develop relationships. You want to mitigate the risk of some relationships. You want to stay in compliance of certain things about relationships, but you all have to have relationships. If you don't have relationships, you do not have a business. Simple as that. But before you relate, you got to validate. You got to make sure that relationship is okay to have. You got to make sure you don't have a duplicate. You want to search before you create. You want to make sure you've got some sort of standardized process that doesn't allow garbage to come in before it starts to go out. GIGO, I can go a whole another 10 minutes on just that one. I call it the golden rule of data. Do upon your data as you would have it do upon you. But first, you got to validate. Then you want to integrate. You want to take all these disparate sources of data you've got and pull them all together somehow, some way. I'm not going to design it for you. I'm a why guy, not a how guy. But that's what many of you try to do when you take at least 2 or more sources of data and try and bang them together. That's integrate. Is it standardized? Is it structured? Is it integratable in a seamless way? That's for you to figure out. But you want to integrate, get a product 360, customer 360, identity 360. All those things mean you've got to integrate. Then you want to aggregate. How do you take everything you've got and pull it all together and get an understanding of reporting? So much reporting is about aggregation, right? How many things do we have and what markets are they in and what kind are they and who owns them? Really standardized, structured data helps you aggregate. Almost all reporting is some form of aggregation, rolling things up on some sort of hierarchy, some sort of classification scheme, some sort of taxonomy. All that structured data that I talk about so much is key to that. But a lot of value comes from aggregating data. Then you want to interoperate. How do machines talk to other machines? Interoperability is probably the word of the century here. Interoperability allows you to scale. So when you've got standardized structured data or data that you have figured out with attributes, with triggers, with whatever kind of crazy stuff you all are working on, how do you put it into production? How do you put it into a situation where machines and other computers get to share it with each other across parties, across markets, across all these disparate different places that you're trying to make work together in a seamless fashion? If you're into the IoT, it's all about interoperability, period. Then you want to evaluate. Once you build that foundation of validated data, structured data, integrated data, aggregated data, then you can evaluate. Then you can do BI and AI and ML and all that other wonderful stuff. But if you don't do that first, if you don't establish that truth first, then your meaning is going to be meaningless. Good decisions you make on bad data are just bad decisions you don't know about yet. Then you want to communicate. How do you get everybody on the same page? How do you get a common understanding? Do we speak the same language? Think about the words people use in business when they're struggling to understand data. How many times do you walk into a meeting and you've got a report and it's got 12 and the person across the Zoom screen's got 9 and 3 of them are different and you're arguing about the definition of whatever, and before you know it, the meeting's over? Happens all the time. You've got to communicate. And if you want to build relationships, you must communicate. Just ask anyone you love. Finally, you want to circulate. That data can't get stuck somewhere in a PDF. It can't be locked in a silo. It can't be held by you in your special little program somewhere that nobody else gets to take a look at. No, data has got to move across an organization. That's where data gets value. You have to bring your data as close to the decision-making process as possible. It's got to circulate. Those are the 8 8s of data value, ladies and gentlemen. There they are. Relate, validate, integrate, aggregate, interoperate, evaluate, communicate, and circulate. And remember, the number one is relate. So thank you. I appreciate. And I got my QR code too. All us tailors, make sure to pack our QR code. Take a look at me. Follow me if you like any of this stuff. I have a much longer video on every one of these 8 8s. I also have it all written out in Telling Your Data Story, Data Storytelling for Data Management. If you go to technicspub.com, use my code Data Whisper, you'll save a few bucks, that's for sure. But hopefully you get that book, and in the way we talked about it, hopefully you'll destroy it. So I want to thank all of you. And oh my goodness, look at this. I got plenty of time left here. Really. I can run like 2 more reps. Just so, all right, 1 minute and 40 seconds. All right, really.
Scott, thank you so much. Wow, that was so full of energy. The comments are exploding, telling me how much energy you bring to the stage.
That's what I try and do, Kate.
And I love how the tailors use their QR codes effectively. I love. Did you guys think about this beforehand, or is some plan?
I use a QR code. When you made that mention, I made sure it was, in there. So we're always trying to impress you, Kate, one way or the other. Let me look at the comments here. Do we have any?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I think we have a couple. I think we have a couple hundred comments, Scott. So let's start with my first question to you is, what is your favorite 8? My favorite 8 has got to be relate. It has to be relate. Relate. Right. It's all about relationships. Every business is about relationships. People forget about that. Or they forget that they're even working on things about relationships. Yeah. I mentioned it. The math is very simple. If you do not have relationships, you do not have a business. Yeah, absolutely. Simple as that. So you got to relate. Starts with relate. Also, a lot of comments about your hat. So I know you always wear the truth hat. And there's a question here from Gordon about the truth. So philosophers have been searching for truth for millennia. Can we really define a single source of truth now? When I talk about truth and meaning, I talk about it in a business sense, like in a practical, operational, production-oriented business sense. I don't get too philosophical around, kind of mystical truth versus meaning in our own personal journey. We've all got to go and find, our own truth and our own meaning. But if you think about it in a data perspective, data management must find the truth for their organization. They must manage the truth. They can handle the truth. So you've got to somehow get down and buckle down and go, okay, what do we mean by customer? What do we mean by product? What do we mean by market? If you don't have those common truths and you get hung up on the philosophical part, you're not going to be able to move forward with the value you want out of data. That makes sense. Absolutely. Question here from Kalyan. He's asking, what are the problems with traditional data management these days? What's happening? From the way I look at the space, data management is more valuable now and more important than ever. It is macro trend agnostic. No matter what people are saying about cloud and IoT and digital transformation and transforming, consumer experience, customer, that all takes foundational data, structured data, well-managed data. The challenge is, and I wrote a whole book about it, the stories the data managers are telling to their own leadership, to their own business stakeholders, to get them involved, those stories haven't been working. Yeah. They are laden with 20, 30-year-old terminology. They're laden actually with either really highly technical, relatively
impossible to figure out stuff that they might tell a business person. Ben mentioned that too. Don't use that language.
Yeah.
Or they have really emotional, tactical words like quality, cleanliness, hygiene. Data quality is super important, but people don't care about quality at the executive level. It's really emotional. It's really subjective. So start, number one, change the vocabulary you use to talk about this space, point it at the business value, and you'll get more funding for data management. I'm the data management, champion and cheerleader here. So
I know you're all about selling it to the business, so I totally get that.
that's it.
You mentioned relate was your favorite, so I figured this question would be perfect for you. From Kelly, what is the best way to build a relationship?
But if you think about relationship in this context, we're talking about customer relationships, like customer, client, vendor, partner.
Yeah.
And if you sort of put a layer of your own personal experience on it, relationships look for engagement. They look for empathy. They look for understanding each other. You want to build a good relationship with a customer. You show them the benefits of what you have to offer in a way that they see it as something that they've got to do. I mean, there's thousands of books written on building relationships, but for our part of the world, a really important part, if you're an enterprise, is to collect, manage, structure, organize all of the data you've got about relationships, either actual ones or potential ones, and keep that in a trusted way that everybody can get access to the right stuff, the right place, and the right time, but build that truth about your relationship. Yeah. And that's the best way to build a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Question from Kathleen. What resources do you recommend for updating the stories around the need for data management?
Gee, where's my book here? There's a really good one. Oh, I got to point the right way. Here's the number one resource right there. Tell you.
Oh, there you go. Yes, here.
Tech Pubs, Technics Pub. And I go through it again, just not to plug the book so much, but I think it's the only data storytelling book that's about data management. And there's a lot of great data storytelling books. You've got some great authors on this agenda here about data storytelling for analytics.
Yeah.
Telling stories with data. You've got to be able to tell stories about your data as well. There's two types of data storytelling out there, one with analytics and one with data management. You've got to understand them both. Your enterprise has to accept and really support both of those if you want to be successful with data.
Yeah. So you mentioned in your book that it's 99% buzzword free. I can't find the exact question here, but I think Al Salami asked, what's with the 1%?
Where's the 1% there? Well, you can round it up to 100%, but nothing's 100%. Al, we all know that. I'm sure I slipped a couple in there, and one man's technical jargon's another person's buzzword, but there's probably a little bit in there. I didn't want to overpromise.
Got it.
I don't want to overpromise.
So, because of time, we are going to take our last question from Jessica. What is the biggest nonsense thing that you've heard about data?
What? Oh, let me think. I think a lot of the words that people use, I don't want to pick on anything, are really nonsense about that. The biggest, here it is. Data is the new oil. So I don't want to take any, and I'm going to tee up my great friend and somebody I really, think the world of, and Doug Laney coming up here is going to talk about how data is not the new oil. But that slogan has taken the data world and veered it off of some kind of ridiculous cliff. The only thing I'll mention that I'm sure Doug's not going to mention is that some people say that caveman drawings were the actual first data, which based on Flintstone timing makes data older than oil. So how could it be the new oil? There you go. So
that's actually true. Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if I was going to mention that.
Go. Yeah.
Scott, I want to thank you. There's so many comments telling people, yes, Pedro's here, Aaron's here. Yes, data management, the truth. Too many comments to address, really, but I really appreciate everybody engaging. I know we're doing book giveaways, and we're going to continue on to the next part of the data party. So, Scott, I want to thank you so much for your time. You always bring it, so I really appreciate it. I'll see you online.
Cheers. Bye-bye, everybody.
Awesome. All right. So before I bring in our next speaker, who is Doug Laney, thanks, Scott, for teeing that up. let's briefly hear about data robots. So there we go.
Hi everyone, it's Richard from Data Robot, and we just want to say thanks. AI is nothing more than a science project unless it solves the challenges you face every day. Over the last decade, we listened to you, took your feedback, and baked it right into our products. You asked us to support text, images, geospatial, and time series data. You wanted us to build an MLOps product that continuously learns. You taught us that fairness, value, and performance in the real world is just as important as accuracy and AUC. So here's to the next decade. We just want you to know we're obsessed with building what you need.
Great, awesome. I hope you enjoyed that message from Richard from Data Robot. At this point, I'm going to introduce our very next speaker, Doug Laney. So Doug is the Data and Analytics Strategy Innovation Fellow at West Monroe Partners, where he consults business executives on developing new data-driven value streams. He's going to talk about Infonomics. Data is not the new oil. He originated the field of information economics and authored the best-selling book, and I've actually got a copy of it here. Yes, I have like a whole stack of stuff next to me. Infonomics. It is how to monetize, manage, and measure information as an asset for competitive advantage. I'm sure he'll touch on the book as well. Just wanted to let you know he's also a visiting professor at the University of Illinois and Carnegie Mellon's business schools and sits on various technology companies' advisory boards. All right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring Doug up on our virtual stage. Hello, Doug.
Hey, Kate. Hey, everyone. Good to be here.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm going to hop off. I'll just let people know that you also are doing a book giveaway, and we're going to give away, I think, three copies to people who ask great questions and leave great comments and engage with the session. And I'm going to go ahead and let you take the stage, and I'll see you in about 10, 12 minutes.
All right. That's great. Let's hear it for the Taylor brothers from another whatever. Great to follow you guys. Sorry, I'm not a Taylor. I think we've run out of Taylors. Hey, by the way, Scott, 1%. I'm no math major, but yes, I am. 1% buzzwords is like 3 buzzwords per page in a 200-page book. So that's 600 buzzwords. There's a lot for us to learn in your book. So I'm sure my book is much more buzzword laden than yours. Anyway, let's get on to the topic here of data not being the new oil. Let's hear kind of an amen for anybody who's kind of sick of hearing this tired meme about data being the new oil, and kind of cut through the clutter of what that really means or doesn't mean. So a number of years ago, The Economist proclaimed data as the new oil, and hundreds of other consultants and let's call them thought followers and others have jumped on and parroted this meme. Certainly, the proclamation underscores data's increasing value in organizations, but from my perspective, entirely misses the point that data has unique economic characteristics which make it potentially much more valuable than oil. So let's explore what some of those are. Here's some of the memes that we've seen, including data is the new plutonium, one that's worth further research, I think, safely. So my name is not Inigo Montoya, and you did not kill my father, but by repeating this tired and inaccurate meme that data is the new oil, I feel that people are killing the broader and deeper opportunities of data to generate revenue streams from it. And I will explain as we move forward here. First, let's acknowledge the similarities between data and oil, which admittedly there are a few. It seems, however, that these characteristics are the ones that continue to really distract us as data professionals and business leaders from realizing data's full benefits. Yes, of course, data can be acquired, but many companies are just not aware that, unlike oil, data can be acquired or harvested not only from their own business or the property that they own themselves, but also harvested or licensed or traded from a wide variety of sources. There are 1 trillion websites now from which data can be harvested. There are billions of social media posts featuring trends and leading indicators that are potentially valuable. There are tens of millions of open data sets published by government organizations and others, thousands of data brokers and aggregators offering data for license, and an emerging crop of online data marketplaces. As well, most businesses have dozens of business partners with whom they can exchange data with. So one of the challenges in many organizations is that they have a complete department dedicated to procuring, I don't know what I have here, for procuring office supplies, right? But they have 0 people dedicated to procuring data supplies. I think in today's world, if you really want to participate in the data economy, that's a tragic mistake. Okay, so next is, and of course, yes, data can usually, be refined in a variety of ways to become much more usable and consumable by business processes. This, of course, involves integrating and cleansing and enriching data in ways for particular purposes. And then we can, there we go. And data like oil or any other kind of asset, is stored in some way, of course. And then also it's piped to those who are using it or consuming it. And just like oil or other assets, data can be purchased. However, more often data is licensed, in which usage rights, not ownership, are conveyed to somebody. So this is an important point to remember. Also, data like oil is used in fueling business processes, whatever those processes may be, and hopefully multiple processes. And increasingly, data is not directed at eyeballs, but at those business processes themselves. So if your analytics organization is purely focused on building pretty pie charts and bouncy bar charts and dashing dashboards, well, they're probably stuck in the 1990s or 1980s and really should be focused on delivering data and insights and recommendations to business processes, not to people. Data like oil can be processed and transformed into a variety of different kinds of products as well. And this is one of the great features of data, is that it can be reused in multiple ways. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And then another way that they're similar is, yes, they can both be spilled. And arguably, unlike oil, when data is spilled, it cannot be cleaned up as readily as oil can. So something to keep in mind. And this is why companies spend a lot of money on data security. All right. So that's where the similarities end. Let's explore the key differences that make data much more valuable, potentially, than oil. All right. First, let's look at what happens when we use a drop of oil versus, say, a unit of data, say a transaction or a customer record. When you consume oil, what happens to it? It depletes, right? And you can't use that drop of oil ever again. Data or information, on the other hand, can be used over and over again without ever diminishing. Data is what economists would call a non-depleting asset. Yes, data's relevancy may diminish over time, but not if you continue to find innovative ways to use it. And if your business, not only yourselves, but maybe others can use that data as well. So if your business model and processes are such that you only use data for a single purpose, then you're really not realizing its full potential. All right. Which gets us to the second major difference. When a drop of oil is being used, how many other ways can it be used simultaneously, right? None. That's right. So data, on the other hand, is an asset that can be used. Oh, there we go. Our sad drop of oil here. Data, on the other hand, is an asset that can be used in multiple ways by multiple people or processes at the same time. It's what economists would call a non-rivalrous asset. This is what makes data potentially exponentially more valuable than oil, because we can use it multiple ways simultaneously. Okay, it's what it's called, a non-rivalrous asset. All right, and then our third major difference between oil and data is what they produce when we use them. When we use data, say customer insights, to generate more sales, these sales create more transactions that in turn create more data. It's a flywheel kind of scenario. This doesn't happen with oil. Using oil doesn't create more oil. When we use a drop of oil, it simply creates heat, right? It creates energy, and it creates pollutants. So data is what we would call a propagating or a regenerative asset. Again, making it that much more valuable than oil for organizations that appreciate and take advantage of this property. So these three main properties here of data being non-depleting, non-rivalrous, and propagating make data very different than oil. And these are the key characteristics that businesses that are thriving in the data age and the information age and in the data economy are taking advantage of. Think of any business that is really totally crushing it in the economy right now. They are reusing data. They're using it for multiple purposes, and they're using data to create more data, more opportunity. Basically, they're monetizing it in a variety of ways. So these unique characteristics of data are at the core of Infonomics, the concept that and discipline of treating data as an actual asset. Unfortunately, most companies don't even measure their data. Why? Because it's not yet a recognized balance sheet asset. The accounting practices are still stuck in the 1930s from that regard. And as the old adage goes, you can't manage what you don't measure, and it follows that you can't monetize that which you're not managing well. So for many companies, this becomes a vicious cycle of not measuring, therefore not managing, therefore not monetizing their data as well as they can. And it's a vicious cycle of under leveraging available data assets, not only their own data assets, but data assets that are available externally as well. So the idea behind Infonomics is to reverse this curse. And that's really kind of the core concept there. So that's all I have for you today. A few simple concepts on thinking about data as much more than the new oil. So I just want to thank you all for joining us here today, and to the dedicated folks, Kate and others, for inviting me. And as we move into the Q&A section, I am offering up a handful of Infonomics books to those reaching out to me with your ideas on the talk or your thoughts on the concept of data versus oil. So you can reach out to me here on LinkedIn or email or Twitter. And if you like what you hear today, I'm often tweeting and posting on LinkedIn on the topics of data monetization and data valuation and managing data as an actual asset. I also teach an MBA course on Infonomics through the University of Illinois, and that course is starting here in the early summer in May. And for those who aren't in the MBA program, you can take the courses also on Coursera.
Awesome. Yeah,
thanks.
Thank you so very much for that presentation. We are ready for Q&A. First, I was just sitting here comparing the number of buzzwords, and I think Scott wins in having less buzzwords in his book.
I'm sure he does.
I absolutely love your graphics, and thank you so much for that presentation. The first question I want to get to is actually from George Firikin, who you're going to hear from on day 3 of the conference. And his question is, if you were to compare data to something, what would that be? Wow.
I guess you might compare it more to something like a patent or maybe a trademark, but probably a patent's a better example. A patent is something that accountants have recognized as a balance sheet asset, but it has those same kind of characteristics of it being non-depleting and regenerative and multi-purpose. So you might think about that kind of intellectual property as an interesting analogy to data. Companies that are using their patents for multiple purposes to generate multiple products, maybe even licensing those patents to others and using it again and again. That might be an interesting analogy.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that.
That's good.
Question for Belkacem. So is there a minimum data to save for a company?
That's a great question, and something that some of our clients are dealing with. I'm actually just working with a couple of clients to help them understand at what point economically should they be disposing of their data assets. We all like to kind of keep them around forever, but that also introduces a kind of risk, right? And an additional cost. So in Infonomics, I posited a number of models for quantifying data's value, and they can be combined in a couple of ways to identify data that's costing you more than the economic value that it's generating or the economic value that you have planned to generate from it. And in those cases, you can make what's called a defensible deletion or defensible disposal decision. And there's some great examples of companies that have done just that, saving millions of dollars a year in unnecessary infrastructure expenses. Now, I would caution you that make sure that you've thought about any and all ways that you can leverage that data first, not only yourselves, but externally. Think about your extended business ecosystem and all the ways that others could possibly leverage that data and generate economic value for your organization.
Very interesting. Thank you for that. And we've got a question here from Frederick. I like the book. How do I get one?
Well, Frederick, if you already like the book, then you probably have it. But anyway, so yeah, just reach out to me on LinkedIn or email on that slide. LinkedIn's probably the easiest way, and I have a handful of books that I'll make available. I can't give one to everybody, but we'll draw. Kate will help me draw a few people to send a book, a signed copy to. Thanks.
It's also Amazon. I got my book on Amazon, guys.
Well, yeah, there's that way too. Sure, that's available on Amazon and elsewhere, right? It's available in audiobook and hard copy and hardcover and an ebook.
Oh, I didn't know you had an audiobook. Is it your voice in the audiobook?
No, I just did the intro. I realized how hard it is to actually narrate a book.
Yes.
So we hired a professional to do it, but I did do the intro, and it took me like 3 hours just to do like 2 pages of intro.
Oh, wow. Oh my God. Yeah, I know that's hard work.
Yeah.
Question from Gabriel here. Could you give a glimpse on how to measure the value of data information?
Sure. The book goes into 6 methods, and I'll highlight them quickly. The first method is an aggregate of quality characteristics like accuracy and completeness. It's called the intrinsic value model. The business value model also looks at key quality attributes, but also rolls in the concept of relevancy. How relevant is a given data asset against a range of business processes? The third method is more empirical and looks at how data actually contributes to the improvement of some business KPI. It's called the performance value of information model. And then what I've done is adapt the 3 main ways that valuation experts or accountants value any kind of asset, like on the balance sheet, using the cost approach, the market approach, and the income approach. What does it cost you to create or generate that data? What is that data's market value on an open arm's length market? And remember that we can sell data over and over again, so we have to aggregate that value across all of the potential buyers or licensees. And then the third method is the income approach, what I call the economic value of information, which takes into account what is a data asset's contribution to a revenue stream or expense savings, and then I subtract out the cost to acquire, administer, and apply the data to kind of get a net value. So those 6 models are detailed in the book, along with examples and some assumptions that are baked into them. Good question.
Great, thanks for that. We're gonna take a question here from Arihan. How do you see the data economy growing in the coming 5 years? Do you see some big changes in the way we consume data?
Well, that's a big question, probably for a longer topic. But in the next 5 years, I see companies doing a couple of things. One is sharing data much more than they are today. Finding ways to do that. There are a lot of concerns about, for example, sharing customer data. And because of regulations like GDPR and the California Consumer Privacy Act and HIPAA and everything else. But what companies aren't doing, and I talk about this, which is they're not thinking creatively about it. While I can't sell you my customer data, I can sell your stuff to my customers. And so flipping that model, creating what I call an inverted data monetization approach is something that we're working on. Hospital who can't sell, I can't sell you, I know who my diabetes patients are, but I can't sell them to you. But I can't sell your healthy meal plan, your gym memberships, your at-home glucose monitoring kits. I can sell them to my diabetes patients and take a cut of that. So there are ways to monetize customer data without exposing it. And as more and more companies realize the full breadth of ways to monetize their data, not just by selling it, I think that's going to really help the overall data economy. The other thing that we're starting to see is organizations become managing others' data. We see some of the large retailers now managing data for others. So creating extended information ecosystem is something that I think we'll start to see from a data management standpoint.
Okay, great predictions. I need to borrow your crystal ball at some point to make other predictions.
Sure. I've got a magic 8-ball.
Yeah, exactly. And I know you touched on this already about the data privacy, but the question from over here, is it discussed in the book? Do you cover data privacy?
Yeah, I touch on data privacy a lot, but there are other, much more savvy experts on that topic. It's a big rat hole. I didn't really want to get into too much, but yeah, some of the concerns that I talk about in what I call the generally accepted information principles. One of them deals with data privacy in particular, in that every time you move data, every time you create a copy of data, whether you're moving it into a spreadsheet or a data warehouse or a data lake, you're increasing your attack surface, you're increasing your costs, you're increasing your risks. So companies need to be economically circumspect every time you're moving data from one place to another or creating a copy of it. And so that definitely has some privacy implications.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think we're going to go with our very last question here because we're at time. From Bharat, how about a comparison of data versus electricity? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure, that's a good comparison. Yeah, to think it all the way through, but that's certainly a good comparison. Electrons are somewhat reusable, but I'm no physicist, so.
All right. Awesome. And I'll just address Tony's question. The name of the book is Infonomics, and you can find it on Amazon and other places. So, Doug, you're getting a lot of questions that we simply can't take because we are at time and have to keep this party going. But
yeah, I'll take a look at them and maybe post a little blog or something in LinkedIn. So search on LinkedIn for #Infonomics, and then I'll address some of the questions. Thanks, Kate.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much, Doug. I'll see you online. All right. I hope everyone's enjoying the DATAcated conference so far. Right now, I'm actually going to bring Ben Taylor back on stage. You heard from him in the beginning of the event when he provided his keynote, but he's actually going to host a panel. So yes, I actually get a break because Ben's going to host now. He's going to talk about going from concept to business value. So I'll bring Ben up, and I know, Ben, you're going to introduce our awesome panelists. So I'm actually going to hop off. Are you all good to go?
I'm all good to go. I'm super excited about this panel.
Awesome.
Okay, so we've got some rock stars backstage that I'll be bringing on. The thing I love about this panel is these people they have a lot of applied experience, but they can actually communicate. So they're not the type of applied data scientists that stare at their shoes. They can have a great engaging conversation. So start off with bringing Lindsay into the stream. So Lindsay, she's the chief data scientist at HireVue. And a funny story about Lindsay, I was at HireVue 5 or 6 years ago, and I remember making a decision that we would not hire a PhD physicist. And I made that agreement with Lauren, the CTO, because we had hired all PhD physicists. And Lindsay made us break her own rule because she was just so good during the interview process. We had to hire her, and she's now the chief data scientist there. She's been a tutor at Boost Academy, and she has a PhD in physics. And anyone that has a PhD in physics, if you go read her thesis, it's got a lot of vector calculus in it. And I think that is definitely a kick in the face for most of us. Lindsay, excited to have you here.
Thanks, Ben. Excited to be here.
The other thing I'll add to, HireVue's been in the news, and applying AI to hiring and in decreasing bias. Lindsay's team, I see them as being one of the cutting edge places working on de-biasing AI. And that's, I'm sure that's something that'll come up on this panel. So I'd like to add Jen Underwood to the stream. Jen used to work at DataRobot. She was the senior director of product and marketing at DataRobot. She's now the director of product strategy and market intelligence at Oracle. And she used to work at Microsoft. So I'm very excited to have Jen here. Tons of applied experience, great communicator. Next, I'm going to bring Eric on stage, Eric Weber. So Eric, he is the head of experimentation and metrics and research at Yelp. And he's had a variety of jobs in the industry. He used to be a senior data scientist at LinkedIn. And then lastly, we'll bring Danny Ma. Danny Ma, where are you? Okay. Danny Ma, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. What time is it where you are?
It is 4 a.m. Yep,
oh,
4 a.m.
Okay, so calling us from Sydney. Thanks for coming. So Danny Ma, he's the founder and CEO of Sydney Data Science. He also runs a website called datawithdanny.com. I like to think of him as being the meme king. So if you've seen memes in data science, we all try to post memes and stuff online. They're never as funny and witty as the ones that Danny brings into our lives. So I'm so excited to have you guys. I'll kick it off with, and if I missed anything on your intros that you think is useful, feel free to kind of introduce it at any moment in time. So we'll start with the first question. And I think the thing I'll say to the audience is this is a live panel. And so a lot of the questions are going to be thrown in from you. So I'm going to be watching that. But I'll start this off with, how do you measure value on a completed AI project? Anyone want to take that first? How do you measure and quantify value on a finished AI project?
That's danger zone. I'll try it, and I'm going to try to remove the word AI from that, just project in general in the data space. I think we often are really tempted to go immediately, when we think of ROI, we think about dollars, like how many millions of dollars or how many did this affect? When in a lot of cases, it's actually like creating a capability for the organization that they didn't have before. Like it's much easier to explain value when you're saying, okay, we need to be able to do this as a business to survive as a business or grow as a business. When we're drawn into a lot of business discussions, it's about, was it $2 million or $3 million or $4 million? When the guesses are not accurate anyway, it's much more about enabling capabilities to me. And I think that's one thing we need to think about is what capabilities and actions can we do now that we couldn't do before through whatever data product or AI product that we created.
Great answer. Does anyone else want to jump in on this?
Well, it reminds me of one of my favorite paper at Data Robot about the communicating the AI value with the lovely graphics on that one. The hard costs and the soft costs, if you think about, as Eric mentioned, missed opportunities. It's many different things, and a lot of times folks are still thinking about hard costs all the time, but really it is, in a market like this, there's very, very small windows of opportunity, and it's the ability to foresee that and then seize it before someone else does. We're working in a really fascinated market right now.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in? I'm happy to change the questions up. We don't all have to round robin them, but if you feel compelled to, feel free to jump in. So the other thing that I think is fun that I like to talk about is how do you protect yourself from chasing the shiny new toy? Because I know everyone here, you love technology, you love AI. If you see something new, you're going to celebrate it and have interest to it. Have you fallen prey to running after technology before it was ready, or introducing something that was maybe a little too complicated? How do you decide when to actually roll up your sleeves and play with something new?
I'll say I think a lot of what we've done at HireVue is something that was pretty disruptive to hiring, and it was hard for people to wrap their head around it. It still can be hard to explain it. So, there are a lot of people involved in making something a success, and it's not just from the side of building models and from the machine learning side or even the product side, but it's from how salespeople talk to customers and how you retain customers. So building out, kind of buy-in from all over, I think is really important. I would also say, just kind of with going after something shiny, I'm a big fan of building proof of concept and kind of getting it in front of people and testing out an idea in a little bit of a low risk environment. That can be hard from with these data products that require a lot of research and development. So in product, a lot of times people will build something that doesn't really work, but it shows you the idea. You need something to be realistic when you're talking about using data science. What are the results going to look like? Is it even going to be good? We have to know if this will actually work before we can prototype it. So in terms of, going after what you go after, I think it's important to kind of wear that PM hat to ask, like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? But to balance that with this open-mindedness about, like, what are the problems people don't even know they have? Like, customers aren't asking for this thing, but it's because they don't know that it exists. And that can be huge.
And so, Lindsay, you're actually a very special guest where you have exposure to bias and the unconscious bias that happens with hiring, and you deal with technologies that literally don't exist yet. And so, how maybe talk to that briefly. What's some of the research that you guys have worked on where it is in production, but there was no white paper to reference when it comes to debiasing an algorithm? I'm sure people would find this fascinating. How do you debias an algorithm if you're giving it data that has a bias?
Yeah, I think we've evolved with this. I think several years ago, and some data scientists still are kind of assuming if I don't tell the model your protected attributes like your age, race, gender, there's no way it could be biased. So done. right? And that's really naive. Obviously, there's a lot of data that is correlated with those things. So it is pretty well known that hiring data can have bias. Humans have a lot of bias when it comes to hiring. If you build an algorithm on that data, it's likely to be replicated by the algorithm. So how do you measure, first of all, what does bias mean? That's a whole area in and of itself. There are many different metrics. Many of them contradict one another, but deciding on what a good fairness metric is. And then, for us, it comes down to figuring out what inputs are causing the outputs of different groups to be different. So getting rid of or de-weighting any kind of input features that are causing bias, that's pretty straightforward. More recently, we're actually writing a paper right now for an IO psychology journal about this. We've just built it into our optimization function. So it's all about what you're optimizing, right? And you're usually trying to optimize predicting the target. But what we have is that we have reward for predicting the target, but also penalty for having group differences. And so we're kind of within the optimization, we're de-weighting any features that cause that differential output. We just did our first third-party audit, which is a whole very interesting space because it's so new. So it's something that we had been looking into and thinking about for a few years, and it just didn't really exist a few years ago. Last year, we engaged Orca, which is Kathy O'Neill's company. She's known for her book, Weapons of Math Destruction. And she's been in a lot of documentaries and things like that. She's an ex-data scientist and now does algorithmic auditing. We are actually doing a few more as well, and they have very different approaches. So there isn't really a standard like financial auditing of what an audit is on AI and what that means. And obviously it's going to differ a lot from industry to industry. So that's kind of a whole world that I'm in right now that I think is pretty fascinating. And I think as we kind of do more of these audits of different systems, there may become standards that that industry can be a part of forming, or legal standards as well, in terms of kind of what makes an algorithm fair.
That's super interesting. It's such a fascinating space because you have unconscious bias, but you have human lives that can be improved and routed to jobs they maybe didn't have access to before. So I'm going to take a brief pause and I'm going to turn the fire hose on all you guys. And so I actually have the ability to click on questions. They'll pop up on the screen, and maybe to consume as many questions from the audience as possible and make this really exciting. We don't need to round robin these. So I'll throw a question up. If you guys see one that resonates, jump in. And if no one's jumped in, then I might call on you. If I call on you to answer a question, if you don't want to answer it, say pass, and we'll just keep throwing questions in. So let's see. Here's the first one. How do you simplify a data science process for the business?
I'll take it. I think in this case, the business is looking at data science as providing some sort of competitive advantage, right? At the end of the day, we're here in most businesses to make money and increase those margins and also increase revenues. And they do so through deriving competitive advantage. And that's data science is often seen as providing those type of assets that are differentiators in the market. So when it comes to doing these things, if you're building something, what are you allowing the company to do that otherwise cannot do? That's a very straightforward way for them to think about it, as it's another asset to the company. It just looks a little bit different than some of the others do.
Awesome. Next question. What's the most unconventional thing you've done in a machine learning project? Danny, Jen?
I'm trying
Lindsay?
to think of what was actually the most unconventional thing I've done.
I can name one that Ben did at HireVue that we still have used for research, which is predicting attractiveness.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something that's kind of interesting, a research question from the hiring perspective that we can see for certain jobs specifically that we've looked at. We don't look at all of them, but just as a research project, that there is attractiveness bias in hiring, not surprising.
So I'm a 4 on a good day. I'm a 4 and maybe like a 5.1 on a good day. And I'm okay with that.
I don't know if it's unconventional, but I did a project for check fraud, and I knew nothing about check fraud. I just don't think this way. So for me, it was really a enlightening project. So bringing it into the executives and the decision makers in the business, kind of making it a game. What do you think? What are your guesses with your gut thoughts, and then reviewing the answers. And that was, it was an eye opener there, and just approaching it a little differently. A lot of times, and back to consulting background, it's the value, it's the approach, it's how you sell the concept. And in this case, it was, people were know-it-alls. They knew, oh, we're experts. We know the rules for check fraud. I'm like, do you? So let's make it a game. And it worked. So it was a little different approach, but it worked.
Next question. How do you upskill, reskill your data science team? So easy, right? Anyone want to jump in here? You guys can also say pass too. I'm fine with that.
You should probably define what you mean by like your data team first to, I mean, the skill sets are so differentiated now at this point. Like there's some common threads that join teams together, but there's also a lot of skills that a machine learning engineer is going to need that a data analyst is not going to. So I guess in this case, it's also a question of, are you trying to upskill them for business value, or also just providing them the opportunity to learn for retention purposes? Both things are really valuable. How you do it, I think there's probably a million. You talk to 10 people, you'll probably get 10 different responses. But first of all, defining what is it, what are these skills that you want them to learn is probably the hardest part of that before finding resources and things.
And maybe we can kind of steer this on the technical side, because I think AI and data science, machine learning is such a wide domain. There's so many things going on. So how do you guys keep yourselves updated or help your team stay updated from a technical perspective?
This is an easy one for me. I usually just read Eric's posts and it's like done.
It's funny. I was going to say I read Danny's memes. This is not a good thing. There's a vacuum for me of information here.
No, it's like you guys are teaming up. So Danny's learning something and Eric's learning something, and you just look over the shoulder of the other one. That's awesome.
Well, hopefully I'm not spilling any NDA. I don't think so, because I think a lot of companies do this. But this is even ironically, we call it Aura Hacks, and the Oracle teams, all the different wish list projects the engineers have, or different ideas. They get time to play and to show their ideas and hack it. And it's a competition for them. And it's just, again, a different way to learn things that you would never have time to learn and show the value of it.
That's awesome. Lindsay, this question is specific to you. So as a graduate student pursuing my math PhD, I find that while the research is interesting, a lot of the work seems disconnected from the direct application in an industry. So Lindsay, how did you bridge the gap between academia and applied in the industry? And so how do you see those two worlds?
Yeah, I mean, I felt similarly in my research, and that this is really cool, but there's only a small kind of group of people who care about that niche thing that you're working on a lot of times. And I think it can be, I think we have a problem in academia in the US because it's kind of seen as like, if you leave, you failed. And I did my postdoc in Germany, and it wasn't that way there. It was very much accepted that most people that get their PhD are going to go work in industry, and that you're preparing for a job. So I think that disconnect is stronger in the US, and that there isn't a lot of knowledge of what's going on outside in what I call the real world. Transitioning to the real world was a challenge. And I know a lot of people that went through this. You get it to a point where you're kind of, depending on what you did your research and your PhD on, you could be kind of overqualified for a lot of jobs, but underqualified in a way because you've never had a real job. So that kind of ties into a lot of my inspiration for working with HireVue, because I went through applying for jobs in ATSs and these applicant tracking systems, and often never hearing anything back, and kind of thinking like, I'm doing well in academia, I'll be fine. I should be fine in the real world, but then kind of having this rough time where you're just applying for a lot of jobs and you don't feel like a human is ever reviewing your resume or your application. So, I think getting that foot in the door, I like to be open about that. It was challenging. And once I did, I've really enjoyed, being in the data science world. I had certain areas that I had to supplement, like, because I did experimental physics. So I did a lot of data analysis, but there were a lot of other things that I needed to learn. My husband, actually, we're both from that exact same background. He was a theoretical physicist who is now a data scientist. I think the research side is really important. Just learning how to ask interesting questions and understand what your results mean and interpreting them and communicating them. Those are all just really, really important skills in data science. For my part, I love working in industry. I'll say I haven't really ever looked back with regret. When I left academia, I think I felt a little nervous. Like if I left, I couldn't come back. If you get off this train, then you're no longer competitive. I've never regretted it. I really enjoy working on high impact projects and being able to kind of see the outcome of your work in a very direct way.
Yeah, that's amazing. The new question here, what's your view on the challenges in ML model deployment and maintenance? You have to maintain these things?
But it's not one time.
I've thrown everything over the fence. Okay, who wants to take this one? How do you maintain your deployments?
Okay, I might take this one because I've been relatively quiet so far. But I'd love to hear what the guys from DataRobot have to say on this as well. So for me, when I think of ML model deployment and the challenges and the maintenance and stuff, I think it depends on where your company and organization is in terms of the life cycle of the machine learning being used in that organization. So depending on some organizations might be early on, where they're literally just going to be scheduling stuff, and they think of that as being the ML ops or being the operations and actually getting things to work and score customers and get it out to be actually used in the wild. So that's one component, but then it goes all the way through to you have these services and platforms which are doing a lot of the ML ops and really being on the cutting edge, like DataRobot, for example. For me, when I think of the challenges for a lot of the ML ops, is mostly going to be of course, there's like model drift, label drift, getting new features in, integrating new features, doing all the data pipelining and making sure that everything flows seamlessly. And you want to update the models as well over time. All of these things are going to be the main challenges, which is pretty stock standard for most of the machine learning engineers out there. They probably know all about this. But I hope that helps, gives you a bit more insight on some of the challenges.
I think one of the important things, and I learned this earlier in my career, but saw it implemented really well in some of my DataRobot projects. But this whole concept of having some sort of early warning system and having a human review that system. So understanding why the model drifted, it might just be a one-off problem or a data quality problem. It's not really a problem, or understanding what is a problem. And one of the really interesting things was hearing from other business analysts that were looking at it and saying, by monitoring and having the business subject matter expert look at the issues, one of the banks uncovered the hundreds of billions of fraud that had missed. So the model management and having not just the data scientists look at it, not just the machine automating it, but some of the subject matter experts looking at it as well as to the why was really crucial in finding more hidden things in all that data.
That's great, Jen, because I think sometimes data scientists just fall in love with the how. Like I'm going to sit you down for an hour and explain the how, and executives are like, oh.
Or they get stuck in the things that don't relate. Again, when we talk about communicating, I think one of my favorite articles was the information one about gobbledygook, because my first shock of working with a bunch of data scientists and bridging these worlds together was, my God, speak my language. And if I could find someone, Colin Priest is great at this, Rajiv Shah is fantastic at this. I thought this is magical if you can really communicate that in a way the business understands.
Yeah, that's game changing, to really bring the subject matter experts to the table in a way that you're not drowning them in jargon and boring them.
Yeah, nobody knows what a rock curve is, and what does this really mean?
Yeah. There's a great follow-up here to what Lindsay was speaking about. This question goes to all of you guys. How do you get your foot in the door? So you're a junior data scientist, you're applying, no one's responding. How do you finally get your foot in the door to get a chance to work on high impact projects?
I'll say one thing and I'll let other people chime in as well. I definitely underestimated the value of connections. Like coming from academia, I just thought my work would speak for itself. And then in industry, no one cares about your publications. So you're just starting over basically. So I think that was my big takeaway. Not to say that I know the answer. It's hard. But just going to meetups, meeting people, networking was kind of a term that made me want to puke before, but it is a real thing and it can be valuable and not totally superficial. Try to connect with people and talk to them, ask them questions about what they're working on, show your interest. And I think that's a good way to kind of forge those relationships that are going to help you get the foot in the door.
Yeah, I'll add to that. This whole concept of marketing yourself is very uncomfortable for the vast majority of us, but it's important. Whether it's from your resume to the meetups, to the networking, to the reach outs that you do, how you present yourself, you are marketing yourself pretty much at all times, especially as you're looking for a job and for connections. So as you're thinking about how to craft those perfect messages, get feedback on them, your reach out messages that you do on LinkedIn, the way you structure your resume, who you're pursuing from creating a network with. I see people kind of network all over the place sometimes, and that they'll just scattershot like whoever they can connect with at all different levels. Being really intentional about who you network with is really important. Why are you pursuing that person at that particular company? Is it for right now or is it for potentially down the road? And so being thoughtful about how you invest your time there is as important as how you invest your time in working on projects.
I want people to be more open-minded. So when I was first, this was again 25 years, so we called it what, data mining? Nobody knew what data mining was. There were no data mining jobs unless you were a PhD. So one thing to think about, so that check fraud project I mentioned, that happened from a SQL Server data recovery project where I just happened to stumble in and say, well, what are you trying to do in solving a problem? So if you think about, moving closer to maybe you can get something as, a data analyst, or maybe it's a data engineer project, finding or working with some of the consulting companies and create, finding opportunities to provide value. You might not get, I didn't get one interview for a data scientist role ever. It was always the data, whether it was analytics or, server administration, whatever it was that I could find to leverage data and then show the business how to use the data or on different projects. So be open-minded and not just fixated on that label of data scientist. That'll probably offend a lot of data scientists here, but for the newcomers, it'll help you, step up to that role.
Can I add in some stuff as well there? So I know a lot of people think about like getting your foot in the door and working on really high value projects, and that's like the aim of what you want to do with your data science career. I've worked with some data scientists where they're literally jumping from job to job because they couldn't find an interesting or valuable enough project. So sometimes it's going to be difficult, and you need to have that understanding to think, okay, maybe I'm not going to jump onto this project and it's not going to deliver $100 billion worth of value, and I'm okay with that. And even for the very experienced data professionals and data scientists who are out in the industry right now, it's almost like a matter of timing, whether you can get a chance to work on some of these projects and how flexible you are to kind of move and shift priorities according to what the organization wants, and as well as your own personal life as well. Some of these jobs might be overseas, for example, so you have to make big decisions. So I think just always keep that in mind when trying to look for the greener pastures on the other side.
We got a stack of questions flying, which is fantastic. So I want to kind of move us on to this next point. How do you convince a business to act on unused data? I imagine we've seen this in our career where we find a data repository or some data project. And I think people that are listening, they probably feel a little helpless where they see opportunities in their business. How do you convince a company to allow you to begin to work on a data set like that?
I think I like the idea of, we think of it as, and this was something that came up a few years ago when we started leveraging more of our data, was what what is our competitive edge? What is going to stop someone from just coming and building this from scratch? And a big answer to that was uniquely what we have is that we've been doing this for a long time. I think when I was hired at HireVue, we'd done 3 million interviews. Now we're at 19 million. So leveraging that data and what we know about hiring and the interview process and what makes a good interview, what makes good questions, how do you evaluate candidates, how do you make this consistent and fair? That's something that other people can't easily replicate. So I think there's an argument there.
How much storage is that?
I don't know. No idea. But no, I mean, we do have, I mean, we don't necessarily keep all of those interviews. Our customers have their own deletion policies. So, but you know, a lot of, as we've built products that rely on more of our data, we have shifted some of those, you know, policies to asking customers, hey, can we keep transcripts from interviews to train models? And, you know, like working with customers to understand that we're going to use their data to improve our product for them. So I think, you know, having those conversations is moving forward with how you retain data and having, you know, the highest standards in terms of privacy and security, so people feel good about, you know, keeping that data is important.
Yeah, connecting it to actions is super important. When you just say you have lots of data, let's go ahead and use it, they still don't understand what action am I supposed to take? What advantage do I get by doing so? And so if you think about how you make decisions as an individual, because at the end of the day, there are individuals that are making these decisions. Why do you decide to go along with things? You often have seen people similar to you have good results. So very similar to, are their businesses similar to theirs that have gotten payoff? Or do you see a unique opportunity for you that no one else has exploited to that point? And so both of those can be powerful levers. But again, we talk about the business as if it makes a decision. It's still people. It's still individual people. And you have to think about like what their psychology is around this, as much as thinking about the business as like this big collective entity.
And maybe
I love that answer, Eric.
Yeah,
I love that answer. It's how people are measured and understanding how the business that you're working in is measured and what's valuable to them. And that will help drive the motivations for different projects. That's a beautiful answer, Eric.
So to pull on that a little bit more, it's really good to find out what their current priorities are. So if you're trying to appeal to a manager, just because you found a data set that you think has value, it may not align with their short-term goals. So the more you understand their pain, their OKRs, their priorities, the better you can align with what they need. Aliens, yes or no?
Yes. Yes, for me.
When are they coming again? Will you zap me up?
Who on this panel is an alien? Okay. There's so many questions here. I'm trying to pick. I'm seeing some R versus Python questions, but I'm gonna avoid those. Yeah, Eric,
Nope.
shake his head.
No.
No.
It's a religious taboo.
No one on this panel can answer that for you. You have to go out in nature and ask that question yourself and come back.
Yes.
Changed. Okay. Maybe I'll throw a question in here. Have you guys ever made a mistake when it comes to data science or something going into a deployment? What are some lessons you've learned going from junior to where you are now?
I've never made a mistake.
I knew I got a rock star panel together.
None of us have. We don't know.
One time I reached out to this guy named Ben Taylor. Well, there's some that I have, you know.
Oh man.
Still thinking that decision over a little bit.
Oh no.
I would say, like, as far as mistakes go, something that's really important to my team is that we don't have big egos. And that's really something we care about a lot when we hire a new team member. As we get bigger, you know, at some point, maybe we'll lose that, but we're still fairly small, and that kind of, you know, openness to discussion, and we'll argue about things, but then we'll completely admit if we're wrong, right? And we kind of all naturally have that attitude. And I think, you know, in terms of admitting you're wrong, or even just asking for help. Like, hey, I built this thing. It's pretty high stakes. Like, I want to get other people's eyes on it. Can you check this? Can I walk everyone through how I built it? And you guys try to poke holes in it. Like, really, really try to challenge each other to make the team stronger.
I have lots of funny stories about mistakes I've made throughout my career. I think one of my favorite ones is probably, so people must have heard of the book, I think by Dale Carnegie, like How to Win Friends and Influence People. Pretty much when I was younger, I had like how to lose friends and piss people off. So, I think over time I realized that if I really wanted to progress my technical skills and be able to learn a lot and have the freedom to learn within certain, like I would say, management constructs and different things and hierarchies and whatever, one of the best ways that actually gave me a lot of return was to learn how to deal with people. Just like Eric was saying, we work with people, people make decisions, businesses are full of people. Really understanding how to get along with people is really, really useful, because it could make or break your project, or also make or break your relationship with your manager, who would be able to give you more opportunities down the line. So I think this is something that probably one of my biggest mistakes early on that I tried to fix. Yeah.
I would say for me, it was trying to avoid mistakes. I think from the academic world, I just had, like, I came out of it thinking I have to get everything right all the time. And when I publish something, it has to look perfect so that reviewers have beat it up for 6 years before it makes it into a publication. Now it just has to be good enough. And sometimes the mistakes are going to come with that. And it's really a mindset shift. And I realized, like, for anyone listening, like, it's uncomfortable because we don't want to make mistakes. But I think you start to realize that you have innovative things come up when you start to mess up, and you have to learn from those things. Playing in like the safe space in this area is fun and useful, but a lot of like the game-changing things are from not playing safely in that space, and that's hard. I still get, like, I can say that and I'm still very uncomfortable with it, even though I know it's important.
I love that, Eric, because taking risks is required for like truly innovative products, right? So how do you take risks without getting your arm cut off? Or how do you balance risk versus reward with some of the products you guys are working on?
Make sure there's a scapegoat around just in case
someone to point to. Have someone on the team you can fire. Plan that ahead of time.
I just blame Danny on a regular basis. Like, you don't know this guy, but trust me, it's the reason that this didn't work.
I blame myself all the time anyway. More blame. Send it all my way.
So Danny, this question is for you. What meme have you posted that's had the most controversy, where people love it and people hate it or take it personal? Can you think of one where you're like, geez, guys, take it easy?
Last year, around November, I wrote like a very sarcastic post where it was on the left-hand side, it would be very common buzzwords that people would try and slide into their presentations and business pitches. And then on the right side, it would be what it actually meant. That one went super viral. I think I got 2 million views, and people were kind of like spitting fire in the comments. It was really interesting because I think 70% of people realized that it was actually a joke, and they were just in on the joke and they were having a good time. And then there was about 20% were just like, what are you talking about? This is nonsense. Like, why would you even say this? You should be ashamed of yourself. So it was an interesting moment.
The outrage machine was strong on that post, Danny. I remember that. That was.
Oh no, your credit score just went down.
Yeah.
You need to go read that book again, Danny.
Yeah, the one that I wrote, right?
Yeah. Okay. Man, you guys aren't saying what I'm saying, but these comments are really fun. Just the amount coming in. So how do you guys make a hiring decision? So I imagine we probably have hundreds of people listening live that are actively trying to get that first spot. And I know I don't want to speak for you guys. I know some jobs, they require previous experience, and that's very crushing for people that are trying to break it in. So what would you say to someone who is trying to land their first job? What are you looking for? They want to get inside your head. How are they going to get their foot in the door with you and your team?
It's attitude. So that attitude, the energy, and it's not necessarily having that 10. You want to have room to grow. And that probably the person that can check every single mark on the application, then you worry and say, well, how soon will it be till they get bored? When you look at having maybe an 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 or a really great attitude, 5 out of 10, and they really jive with the team, that is probably a stronger fit. It's what do you want to do, and the whole it's sometimes, and I bet the higher view will have a much better answer. But for me, in all the different reviews, it's did they gel, and are they excited about this? Are they going to stay excited about this? That kind of thing goes a long way over do they have are they an expert in XYZ?
Yeah, I think with a lot of what we do at HireVue are these on-demand interviews that are asynchronous. So people record themselves answering questions. And there's a lot of, and we have coding challenges as well. That's a really important kind of screening step to get to an in-person interview, where you see, how can they communicate and explain things, complex things in a simple way? And, do they have kind of the technical skills that are necessary? And then I think when we move to in-person interview, one thing that I really care about is that they ask me a lot of questions. It's not just me telling them about the job and asking them questions. I want to see that there's an appetite here to understand what we do out of a genuine place of interest and curiosity. This is a person who, has that appetite, because I think that that's just the key when it really comes down to it. They care about learning, they care about understanding things deeply.
I love the attitude mentioned, because I know some people hunt for passion. They want to find someone that's truly in love with the data science space and in the world that we live in, versus the person that is, here's my resume, I'm ready for a job. I've done no projects since I graduated. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to look for someone else. Has Ben Taylor ever made a mistake? Zero. Actually, I make a mistake every single day. My entire life is a mistake. But hopefully my mistakes are in the right direction. And hopefully I only make the same mistake 5 times in a row before I finally learn it.
Isn't there a mantra, fail fast? The industry's changed a bit since when I started.
I love failing before you start. So could you actually pitch a data science project, mock up some slides, go show it to a customer or manager, and get them to react to it. So, okay. Do you guys have any questions for each other while I'm looking at these other questions? I love this Firehose chat feed that I'm looking at.
I'm curious to ask the panel, what's something that surprised you the most when it comes to building teams or trying to hire people? I think the reason I ask this is that I think I used to think there was some a pretty systematic, reasonable process behind hiring in general, at most companies. But I've learned over time that there's a lot of randomness, and there's a lot of things, very timing dependent, very dependent on who's in the company. And while it's not fun to hear that, I think it also is important to recognize that sometimes that's why it can take a while to find the right position. There's a fair amount of randomness. And I don't think I would have believed that maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Now I definitely do. So I'm curious to hear from the rest of the panel, what are some things that have surprised you about hiring or anything related to that space?
I don't think this is an answer, but I think you hit on a really important point, which is hiring is so nuanced. The right person is not always the right person. It's not just a standard profile of the right person. And how do you balance that, this decision, which so much intuition is necessary, And obviously you don't know how this person's going to turn out. You're making a guess, kind of an extrapolation, and how you balance that with your own biases that you don't even know exist, right? So I think that maybe I'm not answering your question, but asking another one, but that's kind of something that I struggle with, and telling you, and Jen, you mentioned as well, cultural fit. Do they like jive well with the team? What does that mean? And how, and some people have accused companies of using the cultural fit as an excuse to be biased. Like, I just want to hire people that are like me, basically. So I think it's a really hard area.
I've been on so throughout my career, I've worked with some really, really inspirational people leaders within the data science space. And I've also worked with, let's say, more like manager type leaders, or maybe not so much leaders, but more just managers who are just in there to manage their team and kind of play the boss. So what I'd say is that when people are going in and looking for hiring people, there's always on one hand, it's you want to, like, everyone tries to see everything at face value. So the resume comes in, they look great on paper, they bring you in, they ask you a few canned questions, they answer well, and then they bring them on, and then nothing really gels. The team doesn't work, the team dynamic is off. You realize that their mindset, or they were holding something back within the interview process and hiding something from you, and then now you're stuck with them and you don't know what to do. So a lot of these things they're kind of like team building killers in a way, and they all stem from bad hiring practices. So I think it's definitely a really interesting space. I'd love to hear Lindsay talk more about like what you guys are doing at HireVue to kind of like unravel a lot of that nuance and the different insights to it. I think it's a really interesting space.
Yeah,
Danny, can you say data real quick?
Data. Data. I always mix it in between.
Sorry, I interrupted. Yeah, you go, Lindsay.
No, it's fine. Yeah, a lot of companies that use, especially like our assessments product, these AI are pretty high volume hiring, and it's been shown that structured interviews are much more predictive of job outcomes than unstructured interviews. So even just having a structured process that everyone goes through the same thing, even if it's just in part of the funnel, is helpful. But I think that, a lot of that goes to when you're just hiring one person for a small team, is using those best practices. Like, we've kind of decided, these are the things we want to get at, or these are the questions that we want to ask, and this is how we're going to evaluate someone. It can be painful to make things that formal, but I think it's useful to kind of push yourself to formalize it, so you're not making decisions based on gut only. And the truth is, especially for technical hires like this situation, hiring the wrong person is an extremely costly mistake. A lot of companies spend thousands and thousands of dollars, $10,000 per hire, just to bring someone on and onboard them and everything, and then you're left just lost with that money and that lost time. So I think the standardization is an important piece, and as there's many different evaluators kind of discussing, why did you think this person is like that? It's because we asked them the same question. I liked their answer more than the other person because they said that, and kind of just the standardization and pushing to justify why you get the impressions that you do.
Guys, I'm going to do something kind of selfish. I am going to turn the full fire hose on you guys. And so this is rapid response. So as soon as the question comes up, whoever grabs it first, be aggressive. Just what's the 10, 20-second response? And when I put another question up, it's actually telling you to shut up, and it's the next question. So let's see how fast we can go. We'll do this for the next 6-7 minutes. Here we go. Okay.
Flip a coin.
Okay, for the audience, it's time for you to ask as many questions as you can, and I will try to throw these questions up for rapid fire.
Show them the money.
Draw a chart.
It's rapid fire time, everyone.
I don't know on that one.
Are
Ask
you
George
showing
Durkin.
questions? Because I can't see them.
Oh, you can't see them. Shoot. Who can see them? They should be on the screen. Do you guys not see them?
I see
I
him.
see him.
I see them.
Oh, I'm vision
Shoot.
impaired. I probably should have said that.
Team fit and diversity.
Let's read it.
Yeah.
What is the attrition rate in AI ML data science space?
I actually meant to click this one. What is the line between fit and diversity?
I think that they go hand in hand a little bit. I think like with my team, I've seen as we've increased diversity, there's just so many benefits to having different people, even though that sometimes can be hard. We have now more people that are more quiet, people that are more outgoing, but having like for us, having women on the team has been really great. I think like bringing more women on and they take interest in other people's lives and there's more of a friendship there. I've noticed that. So I think they go together a little bit.
And from a diversity perspective, I think it's important to have different backgrounds. So a lot of times I'll see you'll have a leader come from one company and he'll bring all the same team and they'll all think alike. But really you need different experiences and different types of diversity on the team.
Jen, what's your weakness? We just got a question that that typical interview question. Tell me about your weakness.
I'm actually introverted. So getting me out of my shell. So for this new normal is really easy for me. I've been in new normal for 10 years. Not I oversimplify that, of course not. But being introverted. So when someone was saying about, getting out and networking and not just being perfect. At one point, I would just go to my little QB and sit in there and just work really hard for like 12 hours and never talk to a certain person. And I thought that this is work. So the whole first part when someone did mention that, yeah. So I'm genuinely introverted. It's really hard for me. People have to pull me out of my shell.
Okay, fight over this question, guys.
Communication. I'm going to just say like and I'm saying specifically verbal. It's a big deal. The words you choose and the way you structure your responses matter quite a bit.
Can I say smiling when you're on the call with someone? Like you know how there's a thing when you're talking to someone, like you should be kind of smiling whilst you're talking to them, like even if they can't see your face. I think that's like you can really tell. Yeah.
Who's the favorite person you follow on LinkedIn?
Eric.
Who's not on this panel?
Who's not on this panel? Cassie is great. I think she is also pushing like doing things on video, which I'm inherently uncomfortable with. So that's impressive for me.
Does it matter to you that a person is a quick and eager learner if they do not have all the technical skills when hiring? So can passion outweigh knowledge gap? Okay, 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
Oh, 3 thumbs up. Eric, are you going to give us thumbs down? That might.
No, I say it can. I'd say yes. It depends on how much autonomy you have in the hiring. If you have to pass them through a pretty large interview panel, your specific opinion may not be the differentiator in the end. But yes, like I totally believe in that.
If you can also demonstrate that you can learn, that will be ideal. Otherwise, it's just your opinion sometimes. I know it sounds bad, but if you can prove that you've learned something really difficult in the past and you documented everything, I think that's perfect.
I'm going to share on this one, underrated data science skill, which is like deep stats knowledge. Just, I feel like pretty rare. I mean, obviously having like a math PhD or something, there's people that just have mathematical intuition, like deep in their bones, and they can recognize when something's wrong so quickly. And I've just noticed working with people like that, they're incredibly valuable. It's not an easy skill to gain. It takes, years and years and years of practice, but.
So I'm going to take the other approach. I'm going to go to the complete opposite, seeing the big picture. And a lot of times you get stuck in the weeds and you get technical people really, really, really stuck in the weeds, but let's just balance out. There's an ability to understand, again, all the different factors and what I would call, I think I've got this as my tagline. It's like seeing the forest through the trees. That's an important skill.
I'm reading the Postgres documentation, if answering this question for David.
Boring. I'm reading One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I never read it.
Read books like that. Just kidding. Okay, for the audience, we have so to follow. We've had a great panel to follow these. The panelists. These are their QR codes. You can go find them on LinkedIn. They produce fascinating content. Great way to stay up to date. So I'll remove that. Any last words you guys want to throw out to the audience? Any motivational zingers or anything?
Well, I think this is a really fascinating time in history for a lot of the barriers to be taken down. So as more people come online around the world, it's not just, whatever country you're living on, we're all really being unified together. And look at this time of the virtual world being something that you embrace and connect with others from different cultures and learn from them and learn from each other.
I really enjoyed this under 5-second response type panel. I think that was really fun. Yeah. We should do more of these if Kate's listening.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, Ben.
Definitely agreed. Also, I think I appreciated just having different perspectives on things. I think there's a lot of panels where you often get people of similar backgrounds who have all done the same thing in the same way. It was really great to hear different opinions and perspectives on this stuff. And also, Danny's one day going to teach me how to make good memes. For now, I'm just going to steal them and repost.
Anytime, Eric. Hit me up. Okay, some awkward silence.
Yeah, you got to have that on a panel. Yep. It's definitely a necessity.
So I think Kate's going to jump in here.
I had to actually jump in here. Hey, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Wow, this was such a great panel. Thank you, Ben, for hosting. Why are you jumping away? I want to thank you. You keep removing yourself. This is what I get for sharing my hosting rights here, Ben. I really want to thank you guys for this panel. I personally learned a great deal, and I love the rapid fire questions. Double thank you to Danny Ma for staying up or waking up extremely early. I think you woke up like at 3 o'clock in the morning to prep. So thank you so much for that. I had a really great time in reading through all the comments. So yes, again, thank you. Yes, I see I've been watching all the comments, fun talks, and thank you for the live audience for the great questions. We do have 3 more talks following this amazing panel. So at this point, I'll thank you all for your time. I'll see you online, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. So thank you. Oh, look, I love all this. Wait.
All right, thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ben, thank you. I was able to have a cup of coffee while you were hosting. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up. Awesome. Thank you so much. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and keep this data party moving. We do have 3 more amazing speakers that I want to introduce. The very next speaker is actually Susan Walsh. She's also known as the classification guru. So she's got nearly a decade of experience with fixing your dirty data. And it's interesting because the way she says dirty data, you'll hear her say it at least a couple of times today. She brings clarity and accuracy to data and procurement, helps teams work more effectively and efficiently, and cuts through the jargon to address the issues of dirty data and its consequences in an very entertaining and engaging way. Susan has developed a methodology to accurately and efficiently classify, cleanse, and check data for errors, which will help prevent costly mistakes, saving time in cleansing and classifying. She's also created a course called Data Cleansing, the Basics, that's available on iData Quality Academy. And yes, you guessed it right, we're doing another giveaway here. So please engage and comment to be able to enroll into that raffle for winning the course. Without further ado, here is Susan Walsh, the classification guru.
And just to be your brand, I've cut the top of my head off for you. Oh, no one else, just for you, Kate.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, Susan, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I'm going to hop off the stage. And I know you got your presentation up, so I'm going to go ahead and...
Thanks, everyone. How are you? Good afternoon. Thank you. Welcome to my presentation. I am not even going to start talking right now. I'm going to play this and you enjoy.
When you think of superheroes, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Men in tights? Women with superhuman strength? Capes? Lots of superheroes wear capes, but only one wears a coat. A data coat. By day, she's Susan Walsh, but when dirty data rears its ugly head, she becomes the classification guru. What are the classification guru's superpowers? Consistency, organization, accuracy, and trust. With help from her good friend and trusty sidekick, the Data Whisperer.
Hi, Scott.
The classification guru wages war against dirty data, fighting her sworn enemies, misclassification, duplicate, and the typonator. It's the classification guru's job to clean up the mean streets of Excel City.
That was bang out of order.
So, when you're in Excel hell, don't let dirty data get you down. Call the classification guru.
So thanks very much. Welcome to my presentation. As you may have guessed, it is not going to be like other presentations. I am going to talk to you about the dangers of dirty data in about 10 minutes. So it's going to be a challenge for me. So I'm going to tell you firstly, what is dirty data? Because your version of dirty data might not be the same as mine. We all work in different areas. So let's just clarify what that could be. Then I'm going to show you how you can ensure that you have data accuracy. And then I'm going to summarize. So it's going to be a quick whistle stops tour, but I can promise you that once you've seen this, you will remember things from today. So let's start with what is dirty data. So that's twice I've said it already. And also I better check every time I play that video. I'm not sure if Scott Taylor expects some royalties. So if he's in the chat, maybe he could just confirm that it's a freebie for a friend. So let's go first. So what are the first things that come to mind when you think of dirty data? Well, for me, it's misspelt words, firstly. I work a lot with procurement spend data, and I can tell you that people cannot spell, regardless of education background, money that they have, what they do, it does not matter. I have seen the worst and most atrocious spelling, not just of description and descriptive columns, but supplier names, people's names. I mean, it's across the board. And I'm probably guessing that you're sitting nodding your head away as I tell you this, because you've seen it yourself. Things that I have seen wrong include things like mileage, travel, carriage, freight, really obvious things that people just kind of can't be bothered to type in. Then we have things like incorrect descriptions. So this could be a wide range of things. It could be an invoice description, which is the world that I work in, or it could be data tags, meta tags, photographic tags. It could be a whole range of things. So you really have to be careful and make sure that, what is tagged correctly. Then we have missing codes. So if you are working in manufacturing and supply chain, you will know that codes can be missing. It could be an O instead of a 0 in place. Again, we can have typos. People can get the numbers mixed around the wrong way, and it can cause all kinds of problems. The wrong items get shipped out. The wrong items get forecast. The wrong items get purchased. So it's really important to make sure for those and look out for those as well. Then we've got data in the wrong columns. Now, if you work with any kind of personal data, you will know that this problem is rife. So I can give you examples where you have the postal or zip code in the city column, or you have the city in the postal zip code, or you have the whole address in one cell, but the rest of the file has it split out into maybe 3 or 4 columns. You might have the name all in the first name column rather than split out. Yeah, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. And phone numbers as well can be a bit of a nightmare, especially if you are working around international numbers and things like that. Then there's standard units of measure. Now, I worked on a project last year, and I could tell you now that there were at least maybe 5-6 different ways that I saw litres spelt, because we've got the European way and then we've got the US way. Is it singular or plural? Could it be LTR or LTRS? Could it be just an L And then also, do you have a space between the number and the unit of measure, or do you have it together? Because I saw all of that in one file. It was horrific. But I promise once I cleaned it up, it was much better. In fact, in that instance, they had 34,000 SKUs that I tidied up and cleansed down to about 24,000. So it shows the impact that dirty data can have on an organization. And then we've got currency issues. You know, are you working in one currency, or are there multiple currencies, or do you even know? And it might not be obvious when you are working in multiple currencies. So it's something that you should really check for. And then formatting issues. So this is a really good one. And I think as we become more of a global world, business world, we have the issue with dates, the US versus the UK dates. I know Scott's mentioned that in previous presentations that he's done. You know, it can cause a lot of business problems. So you have to make sure you know where the source of that data is coming from. And then finally, we have our duplicates, not our duplicates, but just our duplicates. So I know that you will see that in every single data file. So it would be naive to say that they don't exist, because they absolutely do, but they are probably the biggest cause of dirty data that you would find in a file. And I work in spend data classification, so it would not be silly of me not to show you some examples and show you in a window into my world and why I love what I love doing so much. So the first example is LinkedIn, and the restaurant is description, and someone classified it as a restaurant. But you and I both know that LinkedIn's not a restaurant. So I know, because of my knowledge and experience, that, you know, LinkedIn is probably either advertising, it could be recruitment for a job, could be a subscription, it could even be training. It's certainly not a restaurant. So context can be really important as well. Look at all the columns of your data, not just in singular, in a single column, because you could lose context. And then this is my favorite one. Do not ever assume that you know what a supplier or a person or a description is. This one nearly caught me out. This is Tinder Corporation. And it's not the Tinder that you and I, well, maybe not me, but probably you, would know. It's not the global dating site where you swipe left or swipe right. This is actually a company based in the UK called Tinder Corporation Limited. So they were either really smart or ahead of the time when they set up this company. But what they actually do is provide IT services. So again, it's really important to look at the supplier name and the description and make sure that you have the context, because I was working for a charity, so I knew there was absolutely no way that they were paying for a Tinder account on their business expenses. So that's just a couple of fun examples. But one of the things that I have to say is, you know, it's really easy for me to sit here and show you some of these examples, but when you have a whole spreadsheet full of them, it's really hard to pick out the ones that are wrong. So in another time, in another day, I will show you some tips and tricks on how you can spot those as well. But, you know, what are the consequences of dirty data? So, you know, we all know what they are, but what's the consequences? Well, it's the good old adage of rubbish in and rubbish out, or garbage in, garbage out. And that applies to all different types of data. So your AI, your machine learning, the principles are all the same. If you don't have that accurate data set before you start, then you're in for a world of pain. And then how can you ensure that data accuracy? So, you know, are there anything, the steps you can do or make things better? Well, let's find out. I have come up with this great acronym called Make Sure Your Data Has Its Coat On. So that means that your data has to be consistent. So it's like the standard terms and units of measure that we talked about. Make sure your whole organization is using the same terms and standards. And also define what a customer and a supplier is, because actually, you know what, it could be different things to different people. And even things like addresses, there could be shipped tos, sold tos, there's loads of different things. Then it has to be organized. So think of that messy closet you have. Your favorite top's in there, but it's been thrown in the back, it's all crumpled up. You need to jump through that wardrobe and find what you're looking for. But actually, if you had organized it, you could have your tops, your trousers, your dresses, your suits, and it'd be nice and crease-free, and you would just pull it out and walk away. Data is exactly the same. You can organize it by country, by division, by category, by marketing, product owner, by procurement manager, by anything you want, so that when you need that information, you can just quickly pull it out because it's already been categorized. And then it has to be accurate. And that might be, you might think that's a bit of a silly statement, really, but if it's not accurate, then, you know, how can it be trustworthy? So you need all those things. So that is quick. I think this is the fastest talk I've ever done. Just a summary, there are no shortcuts when it comes to clean, accurate data. You do need a person to be able to look at that data and clean it. You need to know your data, so look at it regularly, because when things are not right, they will jump out at you. You have to maintain it as well. So don't just leave it for a year, because if you're in a mess, you'll be calling me back in 12 months. So, you know, look at it quarterly or monthly, make sure that it's maintained, and also do spot checks, because, you know, accidental deletions, cut and pastes, they all happen. And let's face it, it makes your life easier, and who doesn't want that? And then again, I'm going to say it, make sure that data has its coat on. And if you haven't got the message, then here's a little reminder of what might help you.
Leaving your data out in the cold. You wouldn't go out into sub-zero temperatures without the correct protection. So why do so many companies forget to protect their data? Unprotected data can lead to bad business decisions that cost money and put jobs at risk. That's why your data needs its coat on. This means making sure your data is consistent, organized, accurate, and trustworthy. Consistent means using the same standards, terms, and classifications company-wide. Organized data makes it easier to find. Think of it like a messy closet. It can be difficult to find what you're after, even when you know it's in there. When organized correctly, it becomes easier to find what we want. Data should be accurate, which can mean different things to different people, but at its most basic level, accurate data is correct. And finally, data should be trustworthy. This is critical. If your team can't trust the data, they might not use it. And business decisions around jobs, staffing, and budgets are all based on data, so it's got to be right. Like any code, there are differences in the quality of data services out there. If you buy a cheat code, it might not be waterproof or protect you enough, and it won't last more than one season. If you don't invest in good quality data services, you will end up paying twice as much, if not more in the long run, to fix the earlier mistakes. If you'd like to speak to an expert about data in your own business, visit theclassificationguru.com to find out more.
And if you do have any questions, why not get in touch? I'm here on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, I have a website, and I have a YouTube channel with some how-to guides, so please check it out. Thank you so much for your time. I've probably run over, but hopefully not as much as Scott Taylor, because that's pretty bad if I have done. And yeah, thanks very much.
Awesome. So I don't have a code, Susan, but I did put my sweatshirt on. Thank you so much for that. Actually, to be fair, Scott went under by a minute and a half. I know.
What? Oh my goodness. I thought I was going to run out of breath there. I was like, go squeeze it all in.
Susan, thank you so much for the great presentation. We do actually still have time for Q&A.
Fabulous. I've got my truth tiara because Scott inspired me.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. Yes, you guys are all about the truth. And Scott is here listening to your talk, and he says, as Susan says, it's about the dirty data. Yeah.
He says dirty like a pirate. It's dirty.
Only you can say it. Only you
that's
try to say it right. So let's go to some questions and comments here. You've gotten a lot of questions and comments and great presentation.
I will go through each of them.
Yeah, let's go through each of them right now. It'll only take a couple of hours. So Katina says, has there ever been a time when it was hard to classify when data was dirty?
Yeah, well, most files, but actually I've just finished a project. We classified 3 million rows in 4 weeks, and it was really tough. And when you have multiple languages, that can really cause problems as well. So yeah.
Yeah, but I was going to ask, is it ever not hard? Because I'm assuming data is typically dirty.
There's different levels. Sometimes it's more the complexity. So we're working on a lab equipment manufacturer just now. So there's lots of chemicals and reagents and things. So you kind of have to know what they are to categorize them. But once you've seen it once, you've seen it a million times.
Yeah, I bet. Question from Larissa. So what's preferable? workflows to enforce correct data entry into fields, or exception reports sent to responsible departments that highlight their dirty data to clean up? I love this question.
Oh, yeah, no, I would always say try and fix it at point of entry, because it will take 2-3 times as long to fix it post problem. But it's not always possible.
Yeah, I always think about kind of pipelines and water for some reason when I think of dirty data, because it's better if you can filter the water before you send it across all the pipelines versus trying to clean them up in all those different areas.
Yeah, because it does pick up arms and legs and hairy bits and things on the way if it's not clean first.
Yeah, absolutely. Thomas is asking, any quick win advice for dirty data? I guess, how do we address that?
Like, you can do it in Excel, get a pivot table, do it tabular form, and then you could have, say, supplier and all your classifications, or you could do product codes and the descriptions, and then you could make sure that you don't have multiple descriptions against one product code or multiple classifications against a supplier, and it's just a really quick way to like check if something doesn't look right. But again, you have to know your data first before you do that.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Question here from Carlos. Was data dirtiness also due to different systems trying to collect the same type of data?
Yes, but they also don't speak to each other, so they're all siloed. So, you know, this one is in this country and this one's in that country, and they call it something slightly different, or they have the same column, but it means different things in different countries. That happens all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a clarifying comment here from Deepa.
Oh, yeah.
Was it 3 million?
3 million, and I did a project in the summer that was 2.3 million. So, yeah. There's a lot of data that needs classified out there.
That sounds intense. For anyone who needs their data classified, call the classification bureau.
Yeah, don't do it yourself. Let me take the pain away.
Yeah, you love doing this, right? You just get comfortable and you get right into it.
Yeah.
Walid's asking, where would you suggest to do the data cleaning?
In the bathroom, in the bedroom, in your kitchen. You can do it wherever you like.
I'm sure that's the question.
I wouldn't really suggest Excel. I think everyone has a different preference. So some people love to code. I have some data visualization and modeling software called Omniscope that I use, and I've developed my own methodology within that. You have to do what you're comfortable with. I spoke to a guy just the other day, and he's got these great, amazing formulas and things set up in Excel. But for me, I would probably have no hair left if I did it in Excel.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I know people use different tools for different purposes, but sometimes it is as simple as using Excel, right?
And sometimes I think we complicate things or over-engineer something really simple, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A text to fields in Excel can solve a lot of problems. You don't need anything fancy.
Unless Excel is crashing.
Well, yeah. But then I would suggest cutting your data up either by department, division, category, country, something like that, and do it in those kinds of chunks.
Yeah, that makes sense. Question here from Obehi. Is it advisable to delete incomplete records in a database?
Only if they're wrong. I'd say, if anything, you need to complete them rather than delete them. There's probably some important information in there. In fact, more often than not, it's the right information there, but there's lots of parts missing. Mm-hmm. That's more often than not the problem.
So I guess the message is complete them, don't delete them.
You should not be deleting anything unless it's an absolute duplicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by the way, your duplicate, that video duplicates, I took offense to that. I mean, with my name duplicates.
You could have been in it. You could have been a star.
I missed that opportunity, I guess. All right, let's take a couple more questions. Question from Derek. Do you try to standardize data in after spending time cleaning it?
Yeah, so if it's like supplier names and things like that, I will normalize them and have a master list. If I'm doing data refreshes, I'll have a master classification list. So the next time a new set of data comes in, I can map it on either supplier name and invoice description. And then 80% of my work is done before I've even had to manually do anything. So,
okay, makes sense.
80-20 rule.
Yeah. All right, let's see. There was a question here from Arihant, big data will be challenging and have also huge categories. Pivot tables may not help. Any suggestions when an Excel pivot table simply can't do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it depends on what you're doing. For me, I need to be able to edit and visualize at the same time. So Omniscope's the only tool that I know that I can do that all in the same window, and model on the back end as well. But you might just need something like Power BI or Click or Tableau, and that will, do everything for you that you need. So it really depends on what kind of outcome you're looking for.
Okay, sounds good. There have been a couple of questions asking for some quick tips on cleaning large, dirty Excel files. Do you have any quick tips?
Yeah. So first thing is pivot table on unique things, so like name, description, value, or whatever, or say it's name and description or name and classification. Classify those aggregated versions. So say you've got a 500,000 row file, you might aggregate that down to 200,000 rows just by putting a pivot table in. Export that, classify, or do whatever you need to do to that, and then do a VLOOKUP and map all that back in.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm gonna wrap things up with not a question but a comment here that I thought was really special. It's midnight here in India, but still listening, as this is super interesting and exciting. So Susan, I think that says a lot about your session, that this person's up at midnight.
Yeah, thank you. But also testament to you, Kate, for pulling together such an amazing lineup of so many different speakers. It's like you can't not watch.
Thank you. I don't know if I made the right decision to stand during the conference, because I'm already...
I feel like energized because you're like moving around and I
think jumping around. I'm super excited. So Susan, do you want to quickly talk about your course before we...
So sorry, just jumping in there. So it basically data cleansing is the basics in Excel. So you don't need anything other than that. It doesn't matter whether you're completely new to this or whether you have some experience. There will be some tips to share. I'm going to give away 3. Oh, Mike Wimmer. Hi, Mike. I'm looking forward to his. So how are we deciding 3?
You're picking 3 from the comments and questions that came in during the session.
Do I have to do it right now?
No, we're going to announce it after the conference.
That's fine. Cool.
Less pressure.
So if you want a free course, get commenting.
Awesome. All right. Well, Susan, thank you so much for your time. I will see you online.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Great. Awesome. 1 second before I bring on our next speaker, I briefly want to let you hear a little bit more about Pyramid Analytics. You're going to hear a lot more from them on day 3, but here we go.
Making data-driven decisions requires trust. Trust in the reliability of your data, your tools, and your people. If you're like most, you've invested in overhyped, self-serve analytic tools with promises to make sense of all the chaos, only to find out they don't deliver on your most basic needs. Your users are left to analyze siloed data with complex tools, resulting in isolated and conflicting insights, making it impossible to unite your organization and have the confidence to make data-driven decisions. What if you could restore trust in analytics by consolidating your fragmented tools, leverage your existing data investments, and provide advanced insights for all users? With Pyramid Analytics, you can. Our platform, unlike other BI tools, was built to adapt to your needs, not ours. Whether your data is on-site or in the cloud, you can easily run analyses from multiple sources with no data extraction required. We enable users to access analytics from any device through a secure, web-based system that provides effortless collaboration without concerns of data leakage. And whenever your business needs change, seamlessly adjust your data strategy and architecture without disrupting the environment your users have now come to trust. Pyramid Analytics. Analytics you can trust.
All right. At this point, I'm very, very excited to introduce our very next speaker, Dr. Brandon Hendricks. He's going to talk to us about managing analytics and technical teams. Dr. Brandon Hendricks has diverse experience in project management and operational analysis. He's currently the People Analytics Manager at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. He previously worked as a data scientist with the USDA an analytics specialist with United States Department of Defense, and chief of plans for the U.S. Army. All right, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Dr. Brandon Hendricks up on stage. Hello, welcome to the DATAcated Conference, day one.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you really well. At this point, we can hear you, we can see you, so I'm going to jump off stage. You've got your 10, 12 minutes, and then I'll hop on for some Q&A.
All right, my timer has started. So thank you all for having me. Again, I'm Brandon. I am pretty much an Army guy turned data guy. Did a lot of stuff in the Army, and now I'm enjoying life as a civilian, sort of, and it's pretty cool. And as I made my transition, I tried to figure out like what the similarities were between one world into another one. And as I looked at one of the main things that popped out was just kind of like leading people and leading technical teams. And I thought that like there was a huge difference between leading different types of teams, but turned out not really. And so one of the essential questions I had to ask from the outset was like, what is the role of a manager on a technical team? And from a tactical standpoint, the team manager basically clears roadblocks that either she or the team identifies, or they get budget and people resources and are really in a position to be able to articulate the needs higher so that somebody can give you what it is that you need in order to do a better job. But really, I found out the major role of a manager is to manage the environment. And I found two effective ways to kind of manage my team environment. And I'll share those with you in this time that I have remaining. The number one rule that I've tried to live by in managing teams is remove ambiguity. Ambiguity on the team is a real killer. Clearly identifying what we're providing, like in our service model, is also critical, because I think a lot of times you get assumptions that are baked into what we do on technical teams, analytic teams. And what you'll find is that people believe that you're doing one thing and you're there to provide one service, and they're expecting something totally different. Anytime you have a conflict, I found that there's a difference between the expectation that people have and then what people receive. And so if you can mitigate that from the outset with the team and with whoever your stakeholder is, you're in a much better position to be successful. Secondly, clearly define the problems that your team is addressing. That's been one of the largest challenges I've had over the course of my career in the data space, is that like oftentimes the leaders that either assign you projects or the stakeholders that you're working with don't really know the challenge that they're trying to address. I told somebody recently, I feel like I'm a data therapist. I think that's what I am really, because I have to come to acceptance of the problem that I have, and I have to help other people come along and say, yes, this is the thing that I'm trying to solve. And that's an art. You have to learn how to work with people, and sometimes technical folks get the bad rap of being hermits or people who don't work well with others. We're all just in there, our keyboards and that sort of thing, and that's true. That's not true for everybody. But one thing I would say is that you as a leader, if you have those sorts of people on your team, or even if you're that person on the team, there is this need to find out how to be more relatable to folks that aren't in your technical space. It's something that I have to do currently still. And it changes as your environment changes. So your ability to figure out what other people need is critical to your success. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the effect of having an ambiguous environment. And as a leader, as a team leader, a manager on a technical team, there's some stuff that can really kill your team dynamic, namely the job dissatisfaction that comes from working in an ambiguous environment. People may love the job initially and come in, but when they come in, but as you work in an environment where you don't know what right looks like, you start to be less satisfied with what you have, because there's just so much that you don't feel fulfilled in. You start to get unfulfilled in your work tasks, your supervision ratings will go down, And if you think people aren't going home and talking to their spouses or significant others or friends about you, you are dead wrong as a manager. And even as a coworker, like I know that people just talk, and you have to be aware of that. And it's not that that should be your primary concern, but that's an indicator for the health of your team. And going back to this idea of being dissatisfied with your work task, I knew somebody that decided that they were going to stuff envelopes just to feel like they had accomplished something every day. You know, they took a part-time job to like just doing this mundane task simply because their regular task, their regular work day didn't provide for them what they wanted. And all of this may seem like something that's difficult to measure, but I can assure you that you'll be there's significant business impact when your team doesn't feel like they're in a position to do their best work. And as a team leader, that's your job to provide that environment. Secondly, dealing with ambiguity requires that you have some sort of skill on fixing it. So here's some quick tips. Leaders create structure. They initiate structure, they create structure. They clearly communicate the expectations for what you are doing and what you are not doing. Tell your teams what the rules are. Show them how to be successful. Show them how to fail. Show them how to fail and recover from failures, even provide your own experiences. People learn a lot from you when they see that you have, like, you made your mistakes, but you're still where you are as a manager, as a leader. And they say, well, wow, if you can make that mistake, I can do that too. How did you come through that? And if you've already paid for a mistake, there's no reason your team should be paying for it too. If you've gone through it, that's enough. Clearly define the work problems. Talked about that. There's some critical questions that would come in with this, like, why are we solving this? What does the business need? Is this the best way to solve the problem, or should we even be solving this problem now? That's critical. Lastly, I would say that building a team community is the other way to make sure that your team is successful in overcoming ambiguity. Anytime you have a community, it means that you have at least 3 key ingredients. One is called, the first one is consciousness of kind, is what they may refer to it as, but all it means is everybody on your team has a sense of a distinct meaning for that team, their membership, and that they're different than maybe other teams that may be exactly the same as them. But they're on this team. We're a part of this. You have to figure out a way to create that on your team. Some of that could be by the second thing that you have when you have a community, which is a ritual. Like we all have data rituals. Hey, I'm going to come in, we get my coffee, I'm going to fire my machine, I'm going to do some set of things. Every workplace has that, but you have rituals when you have a community. And then lastly, you have traditions. So one of the things that I found was really helpful is like, hey, when we have a really serious work week or a difficult work week, traditionally we'll just get together and say, hey, all right, let's go to the nearest watering hole, bar, hotel, whatever, someplace nearby the job, and we just hang out and probably talk about something other than work. But it's a chance for your team to blow off steam. I know people do happy hours all the time, but you have to be intentional about this if you're running a team. I would say that one of the things that managers have difficulty with that I've seen is encouraging people to ask questions, and difficult questions. I really like that some of my co-presenters had this element of truth about it. And I feel like a lot of that's lost. But when people ask questions on a team from a technical standpoint, they're trying to get to the truth. That's why we all do this. And I would encourage you to ask people to ask difficult questions, because if you discourage that, one, you may come off as arrogant and insecure, but two, you don't get the best out of people. People challenge you because they're smart and they think deeply. They're not always challenging you because they want to take your job or make you look bad. That may be the case sometimes, but lean toward people being at their best and trying to pull the best out of you as well. Lastly, I would say to learn how to best represent their team's capabilities, figure out ways to show them off, find venues for them to express the things that they've learned. And then a last point would be learn from your team And if you haven't learned something from your team, you may not be paying attention to them as well as you should. So with that, I'll conclude.
Awesome. Brandon, thank you so much for that amazing presentation. You've got so many questions and comments that are just flying in. I want to start with, there are several comments thanking you for your service. Christian, David, Joseph, Svetlana, and many, many others. So thank you so much for your service.
I appreciate
your presentation. I want to start with, you mentioned that team leaders need to show their team that it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
And show them how to recover from failures. Do you have an example from your prior experience that you can share where you've either seen a leader or have been the leader that has shown your team how to fail?
Yeah. So what I'll do, I'll keep it simple because I've had a bunch of failures and I don't want to tell the long stories. So what I will say is most jobs have an evaluation process that happens at the end of the year. I'll show my team what was said about me as a critique. And I'll say, listen, they said, maybe you need to be better, make something up. You need to be better at talking to people who work in a particular department. Okay, I tell my team that because there may be a skill set on my team that would be able to help me with that. Somebody may have more experience and say, like, you know what, I've been working with so-and-so in that department for years. Let me show you how to get through to them. And so me sharing the critiques that I've received have actually helped me. And I think that that might have been an armyism I learned, that like, hey, whatever my boss was tasked to do, I then was tasked to do some subset of it. And I had to show my people like what was expected of me, and therefore it was expected of all of us. But in my failures from those, or in the things that I didn't do quite as well, it's good for them to know so that they don't have to make that mistake.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. We've got a question here from Danny. He's asking, what are the most common roadblocks, right, to building these teams?
Clearly defining what the team is set up to do, what the team's not going to do, the time constraints, how you're going to, like an intake process. When I said, managers are to set up like some sort of structure. One of the things I found is that a lot of places don't have intake processes for how they're going to receive analytic requests. So, and that may not be the case everywhere, but you may have, like, some of my friends work in people analytics like me, and they may have requests coming in from one department or another department, or through a system or two systems. That's hard to manage. So just being able to corral all of the work that comes in is key to making sure that you can get everything done and don't miss anything.
Yeah, absolutely. A comment here from Natasha saying that she loves how the speakers are wearing their DATAcated gear. So thanks.
That's right.
She loves the synergy. And I know you mentioned reducing or removing ambiguity. So I think this question from Bradley is a good fit. How do you address ambiguity if what is correct doesn't exist yet, building something from scratch?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've been in that position quite a few times. I think you determine what that is. You decide what you're going to do, Bradley. Like I would say that, like, hey, look, I don't know what the world outside of me is doing, but this is what I'm doing because I'm trying to meet this particular need. Now, don't get me wrong, that does come with a downside in that, like, somebody may come along and say, you're not supposed to be doing that. But then I found it that when I've been in that position, I say, look, if there are no speed limits, there are no speeders. You can't tell me something's wrong if you haven't posted a sign.
Yeah.
It's saying that this is where it's supposed to be going. So it just helps you to define what you're going to do. It doesn't necessarily make it right, but it's right for you in that moment until better guidance comes along.
That makes sense. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Bradley.
Alberto says that your talk is really inspiring about management. We're all human and we all made mistakes. And that was addressed actually on the panel earlier today as well, when we spoke about what mistakes people make, and everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah. Thank you, Alberto. Yeah, I made a lot of them. I learned from them too. So.
Yes, as long as we learn from them, I think it's okay to make them.
Yeah, learn and don't
make the mistake once, so you can actually learn. Question from Elise: how do you advise to challenge a team who are different skill levels without appearing biased?
I think that one of the things that I found is that a lot of people don't train their folks. And so if you institute some sort of level of training, like consistent training, like right now, well, probably not right now, but like before things got all crazy, I had it where we would just take a day and just train. Maybe not the whole day, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. We would just train. That time was secret, right? And I think that in doing that, you kind of avoid this apprehension of engaging people who may be at different skill levels, and you don't want to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to challenging those teams, you may set up different challenges within that based on the skill level that you've currently assessed previously in the training that you provided for them. It's kind of a long answer, but like there's some prerequisites you got to have first in order to start challenging people adequately. Because what you don't want to do is offer a challenge and you have some people who can't participate because they're not at this skill level.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And we'll take one last question from the audience. This one's from YouTube. When creating team culture or events like you mentioned, how do we ensure inclusiveness? For example, a team trip to a bar may not be for everyone.
That's a very good question. And the thing is, I don't really drink. I just have I go out there with my people because I know they do. I think you find venues and you find things that are of interest to everyone. You just may even say, hey, look, we're going to go hang out at a bowling alley. And you may have people that don't bowl. You may have people who are wheelchair bound that can't. You may have all kinds of circumstances. But you find something, you just have to be thoughtful about what people have expressed on the team. And I think the way to do that is to spend time with the team as people, right? Like maybe you have, instead of meetings, you have a working session where you all just kind of get to know each other. It's kind of a little bit laid back. And you can find out then what's important to folks and figure out a way to hang out with them and to just blow off steam together.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess once you know your people, then you'll know how to engage with them and how to build that culture.
Exactly. It's a lot easier.
All right, Brandon, well, I want to thank you so much for your time. I know this probably flew by. It flew by for me because we still have so many questions and comments coming in. But this is rapid fire, and I want to make sure we leave time for our next speaker. So I really want to thank you so much for making time for the DATAcated conference.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Awesome. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, at this point, I want to introduce our big closer. Our final speaker for day one of the DATAcated conference is the one and only Ken G. So Ken G is going to talk to us about small data. There's big data, but we're going to focus on small data and how pet projects can improve your life and your business. So Ken is the head of data science at Scouts Consulting Group, and he spends his workdays improving the performance of athletes and teams by analyzing the data collected on them. In his free time, and I'm sure he has a lot of free time, he'll talk about that. He dabbles in entrepreneurship and content creation. He's best known for his YouTube channel where he helps over 115,000 people, that's a lot of people, to navigate the data science landscape. He enjoys making commentary and tutorial videos, and he also eats like really hot peppers. There's a YouTube video of him doing that makes the field of data science and machine learning accessible to everyone. More recently, he has turned his focus to a project-based learning through Kaggle. He hopes to share the processes that data scientists take when approaching Kaggle competitions and new data sets. He started the hashtag 66 Days of Data Challenge on LinkedIn, on Twitter, I guess it's across all social media, to help people create the habit of learning and working on projects every day. In his other free time, he has a lot of free time apparently, he enjoys golf, fishing, yoga, and cooking. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and bring Ken G up on our stage. Hey, Ken, nice shirt.
Hey, thank you. I love it. Thank you so much for having me. I was going to do a little self-intro, but you knocked it out of the park.
Great, thank you. Well, I don't want to take up any of your time, so I'm going to hop off stage. And yeah, I'll let you take it away.
Perfect. Well, I think you might have embellished just a little bit, but I'm actually going to do something a little different rather than seeing my face, which, you know, hate it or love it. I'm gonna share some slides today, so we'll have a little extra visual stimulus for us to look at. So I don't know, Kate is okay. Here we go. Perfect. Let's do. Excellent. So thank you guys for sticking through the entire first day just to hang out with me. I really appreciate it. And hopefully this conversation on small data, how pet projects can improve your life and business, will be useful and meaningful to you. Kate had already introduced me, so I think we can avoid that part. But something, if you're familiar with my content, with anything I produce, I'm a big believer in explaining through examples. Examples to me are the thing that are incendiary. They create that spark that inspire other people. So if you hear about my projects or some projects that other people have done, you might get an idea from that, and you might be able to integrate that into your own life rather than me just telling you how to build a project or telling you what to do. I'd much rather show you and have you create those really cool connections in your own mind and bring those things into your world. So I'm going to start with a couple projects that I've done. I'll move on to a couple ways you can integrate projects into different specific areas of your life. And then at the end, I'll show you the steps you can use to really bake these things in and make them part of a daily routine or part of this avalanche of things that can bring you success in all of these different areas of your life. So let's get started. For me, all of this really did begin with golf. So I played golf in college at a fairly high level, but I was practicing all the time. I was working really hard, and I just couldn't seem to keep up with my peers. It was infuriating. I was waking up early. I was going to the gym. I was going to the range after class for hours, and I just wasn't, competing as well as my peers were, who were, like at the bar until 4 a.m. And so I decided I needed to do something very differently. So at the time, I was an economics student, and I'd been dabbling with Excel, and I thought it would be interesting if I collected my own data. So I went through, I collected all of the scores for my rounds, the holes, where I was missing my tee shots, where I was missing shots all over the golf course. And I eventually was able to understand the weaknesses in my game, but more importantly, the areas where I could make the greatest marginal improvement. So if I spent an hour in one area of my game, I might improve less than if I spent an hour on another area of my game. So I really started to practice like that. I used this data collection and this quantitative mode of thinking to make a meaningful impact on my performance. And I did. I started playing a lot better. I got good enough where I even tried to play professionally, although the numbers did suggest to me that I wasn't good enough to keep doing that over the long term. So regardless, this is something where I didn't have any data science skills. I was just collecting data, and it did have this meaningful impact on my performance. And that small thing, it gained momentum, and now this is what I do for a living. I analyze golf performance at the highest level. So it's funny how this thing started as me just selfishly wanting to beat my teammates, and it transformed into this career for me. Now, let's move on to something that is way less important than golf, and that would be personal health. For my health, I had felt that I was lacking energy for the last couple of years, and I went down a bunch of rabbit holes trying to figure out how to improve my energy. And there were two main levers that I thought were really interesting to pull. So the first was sleep. The second was how I ate. And I came across these two books that had, again, a very meaningful impact on my health and my life. So the first is called Why We Sleep. And Matthew Walker goes really in depth into sleep hygiene, so the things we can do to improve our sleep, but also the importance of sleep in our lives. And it terrified me, to be perfectly honest. But, in that case, he did all of the hard work doing this research. I just had to read it and apply it. And so the same thing, I bought this. This is a Oura Ring. It's a sleep tracker. And I also track some of the activities that I do every day related to my sleep, exercise, where I put my phone at night. And I was able to figure out, okay, these things by this experimentation A/B testing have a really positive impact on my sleep or a negative impact on my sleep. The same thing with the book is called The Personalized Diet. This is an article about the book called The AI Diet. And this is out of the Weizmann Institute in Israel. And they found that your gut bacteria, your microbiome for each individual person is unique. It's like a fingerprint. But your gut bacteria also has a tremendous impact on your sensitivity to foods. So they actually used quite a bit of machine learning. So if you give them a sample of your gut microbiome, they can tell you what foods you're sensitive to. So I read this book. They also have some experimentation things where I can journal how I feel after the food energy-wise. I can also test my blood sugar after the things that I eat. And it was a very quantitative way for me to figure out the things that worked well for my body and my energy levels, and the things that didn't work relatively well. So this case is a little different. I am, hopping on the shoulders of giants, where I'm never going to do the sleep research. I'm never going to do the gut microbiome research, but I'm leveraging what they have and I'm localizing and I'm making it useful to me. These are all still pet projects. The last example I want to use is of my YouTube channel. So as Kate had mentioned before, I have recently passed the 100,000 subscriber threshold on this platform. But it obviously wasn't always like that. Just a year ago, I had less than a couple thousand subscribers. And even before that, 6 months before that, I had less than 1,000. And so this is when I ran this analysis. I was less than 1,000 subscribers, and I looked at all the different, a bunch of the different factors that could contribute to me gaining subscribers. And at the time, subscribers to me was really meaningful, is creating a community, is creating this critical mass of whenever I published a video, I wanted people to be able to watch it and kind of get that spark going in the algorithm so it could essentially get to more people. And I looked at a bunch of the different things that I thought could be associated with subscriber growth. So how many videos I publish, when I published them, when I posted them, all these different things. And I found that the single biggest contributor to gaining new subscribers was introducing myself to Facebook groups. Now, I did this I'd post in a couple Facebook groups every day, and this is what really created momentum, getting people interested and involved with my channel. And I hopefully wasn't spamming. I was doing my research on the communities, making sure I was in line with the guidelines. But that one thing, again, had the largest impact. And if we can see on the slide, it's a little small, but every Facebook intro post I made, based on this regression, it essentially equated to around a little less than 20 new subscribers on my channel. So I probably did like a couple hundred of these, and it did equate to a lot of growth in my platform here. So to me, that was something very clear cut, something I used a bit more advanced analytics for, and it was really easy for me to see what my decision should be going forward there. Again, this is like essentially early college math that I used here, but I was able to, I'm a firm believer that this is something that really kickstarted the growth of my YouTube channel here. Unfortunately, I hate to tell everyone who's trying to grow on YouTube now, I don't think this tactic works anymore. It's become quite saturated. So I'm planning to rerun this analysis to see at my stage now what the most important levers to pull are. So what is a pet project really? So all of these had some element of data collection, some research and experimentation, and also analysis. But I want to make it clear that a pet project does not have to have all of these things. A pet project can just be data collection, right? If I am, trying to get healthier, and part of getting healthier is me losing a little bit of weight, just tracking my weight every day, weighing myself, looking at the scale, sometimes that's enough. It puts it into the front of your mind. It gets you aware of that area of your life that you didn't have before. I'm a big fan of this other book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And one of the things that they do there is they make a scoreboard for yourself. So you're seeing and you're tracking your project, and often that is enough to inspire action. We touched on the research and experimentation, and I also touched on the analysis in that last YouTube video. So what are some examples of projects that could help you based on a specific area of your life? So for health, I'd mentioned just tracking is enough. So sleep, workouts, food. I also think you can experiment with those things. One huge factor in my life is I stopped sleeping with my phone in the same room. At 8 p.m., I throw my phone into a drawer in my desk, and then I go to bed upstairs. And that's been a game changer for how I sleep. The next thing is getting a job. So something I find interesting is that I find that very few people who want to get data science positions approach the data science interview process like a data scientist. And I said data science a lot in that sentence, I guess. But the idea is that, okay, what skills should you have for one of these positions? I recommend going and analyzing a bunch of job postings to figure that out, right? So you can go and you take 25 to 50 positions that you would like to work in, and you see what programming languages they're recommending. You see what soft skills they're looking for. You see what tools they'd like you to be using, and you aggregate that, and you take maybe the top 5 that are most common, and you make sure you know those cold. You make sure they're on your resume. And I did something sort of similar to this with my Project from Scratch series on YouTube. Definitely check that out if you're interested in building a portfolio or you're looking at expanding on your own projects there. The next thing with getting a job that I saw, my friend Jeff Lee tracked all of his job application success rates by channel. So if he was doing a resume drop, if he was doing a referral, if he was applying in some other way, he tracked his success across all those different avenues. And he was able to determine for himself, what are the best ways to get into a company? Is it a resume drop? Probably not. Is it a referral? Probably yes. Is it some other way? Those are also pretty high probability ways as well. And so this helps him anytime he wants to go in and do, if he ever wants another job, or it helps anyone who reads his blog post. And I'm happy to share that one if anyone reaches out to me. Switching to the business side, something for me on YouTube, I'm trying to create a better way to engage with the community. So I'm building a customer-facing leaderboard to kind of show and track interaction engagement with the channel. You could do something similar with your business. People love to hear how engaged they are with the platforms that you're using. Something a little bit more simple is just an A/B test of your mailing list. These are all pet projects. They don't have to be large. They can just be one-off things. But if you learn something from it, it creates value. The last area is leisure. I personally love doing these. I think they're fun. I saw someone do a project where they analyzed their Spotify data. And Spotify has a great algorithm, but it's meant to be customized to however many millions of people that are using the platform. You, in theory, could probably build a better algorithm if it's just for yourself. So this person was fascinated with finding new songs, discovery, and he went about and built one for himself. Another awesome one I heard about on Clubhouse was from Iasia Brown, and she made a smart mirror just for herself to use, for her kids to use, to help organize their life. And she kept adding to it, and it turned out to be something that is like completely integrated with their household that they use every day. And she works at Microsoft now, and that was instrumental in her getting her job there. She could talk about what she did, talk about the additions. All of these things are elements of what you do at work. Now, I just want to end with a little overview and how you can start integrating these things into your life. So my biggest advice is to start with a problem. In all the 3 examples I was using, I started with something very clear-cut. I wanted to beat my teammates in golf. I wanted to have more energy. I wanted to grow my YouTube subscriber base. The second thing is to collect data. That's something that you just need to do, or you at least have to know where it is being collected and aggregated. That could be as simple as wearing a fitness tracker. The third thing is you want to see if other people have solved something already. So I didn't go and try and do all the sleep research on myself. I didn't try and go and do all this diet research on myself. I went and found people who had already done that pretty aggressively at a way higher level than I would ever do it. And then I integrated it into my life. I expanded on it and I localized it for me. The last thing I would recommend doing is to share your pet projects with other people, just like I'm doing right now. And I wanted to end with these dog images because it was a cool project I saw online. Someone generated using GANs images of their dog. And in my mind, literally and figuratively, that is a perfect pet project. Now, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm happy to take some questions now. If you want to ask me questions for Overflow, the best way to do that is comment on my YouTube channel. I respond to all my comments, and I'm also available on Twitter. So
awesome, Ken. I love this picture. I'm going to keep this up for a minute so people can get your...
Oh, no.
Oh, okay, so you removed it. So
oh, no, sorry about that. That's okay. I was trying to look at the screen.
Oh, okay, got it. Well, yes, I had your slide up there. But Ken, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I love the idea of the pet project and how you wrapped it up with an actual literal pet project. I can definitely relate. When I was getting started, I actually used my running data to visualize it. I would visualize every mile I ran and look at the pace, and kind of it kept me running. And I even had like a slogan where Kate runs on data, literally. Like I would run and then
I love
look
that
at data. And that was part of what kept me going to hit those targets, to see how the trends are forming and all that. So definitely great advice here. We do have a lot of questions and comments, so I'm gonna jump to that right now. We've got Emily saying she loves your YouTube channel.
Thanks, Emily.
We've got Chaitanya saying, yes, Ken, you have a lot of fans here, Ken, a lot of fans. So
Awesome. Thank you all.
yay, Kenji. There have been a lot of questions of where they can find your YouTube channel. So we can share a link after the session, but it's Kenji, right? If they just look for you.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can go to YouTube, just Kenji, and also, oh no, I didn't put the link, but yeah, I should be the first one that comes up.
If you're not, I'd be worried. Yes. So, Nivetita is saying, yay, you're so inspiring. Love your post and your hashtag 66 days of data. You want to do a quick plug on that hashtag while we're here?
Yeah, sure. So for anyone that's interested in kind of taking your data science ability to the next level, I'm a huge believer that habits are the most important thing to do that. So rather than grinding for a couple days and doing 6 hours a day, I think it's more important to create this daily habit of learning data science. So the 66 days of data challenge is very simple. You just have to learn at least 5 minutes of data science every day for 66 days, and you have to post on your favorite platform about what you learned that day. So the other big component there is accountability. If you let other people know you're doing it, you're more likely to continue doing it. And sharing your work is also really important, as I had just alluded to in the presentation.
Absolutely. I agree. All right. There's a question here from Matthew. Ken, what collection of small projects would you recommend for a comprehensive general understanding of data?
So I would recommend doing, I would recommend doing a project in a couple different areas. So one is a classification project to determine if an output is one thing or another. So it could be a binary classification as our model projecting this is a man or a woman or something along those lines. Probably not the best example these days, but the other type of project I'd recommend is doing a regression. So you're predicting a continuous variable, right? So you're predicting how far someone could throw something or something along those lines. And the last type to just get to iron things out is a clustering project. So you want to take unorganized data or unlabeled data and group it into different categories so you can essentially understand the central tendencies and what are the similar characteristics of those things.
Great. Thank you for those suggestions. Awesome. Question from Chris. Ken, have you ever dabbled with the smart golf clubs? I didn't even know that was a thing. I don't know if you
Yeah, I've looked into Arcos. I think they're good products. I just if I do the strokes gain data, I use the MyRound Pro app by TaylorMade. You essentially log it yourself rather than relying on the clubs to do it. But I think it's a cool technology. That's essentially the same data we use for professional golfers from ShotLink. So it's pretty neat stuff, and I would love to get my hands on that data set for amateurs.
Awesome. Got it. Question here from Sandipani. Is writing blogs on your data analysis projects a good way to build one's data science portfolio?
It is an incredible way to build your data science portfolio. So, something that a lot of people don't realize is blogs are a very powerful way of communicating. In the workplace, especially now, you communicate more through writing than you do through voice or calls or whatever it is. So if you can clearly write, that shows something to employers about you that can be pretty compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Comment here from Jean. Watching now, this is a great and unique conference. Yay, thank you. Likes the flow of the speakers and the timing in between. That's awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Vamshi is saying, how does one collect data or retrieve data and analyze it? Like Excel, or I guess Vashni didn't finish his thought, but.
So you can log things in Excel. That's what I was doing for my golf game. There are plenty of apps where you can track your own data, especially the fitness data I was mentioning. You can have wearables, so the Oura Ring, a Fitbit, Apple Watch. You can all export that data. In addition to that, you can use APIs. So for example, I can use the YouTube API to export everything on my channel. So there's a lot of stuff being collected on you. You can even, I think, download your Google Maps data. So just being aware of it is kind of the big battle there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, question here from Ravit. How was the hot chili super insightful session? Remember the pepper? So
yeah. I ate a habanero and tried to explain data science, and it was not my best choice. It turned out to be a fun video watching it, but in the moment, it was a terrible idea. I will not be making that into a series.
Yes, absolutely. We do have time for one last question, even though we probably have at least 100 that we didn't get to. So Walid's asking, does teaching someone also help, just like blogging?
Yeah, I always recommend teaching. That's something that I've used. Again, I'm using a lot of levers, but that's a powerful lever in my life. If I can teach something, then I believe I truly know it. I think teaching something, unless it's in a formal setting, it's a little harder to explain the value. So unless you're recording the teaching session or it's formalized, like you're an instructor for a course or you're an instructor for a university program, it's harder for employers to see that if that's where you're going. But I love the idea of teaching. I think it's very valuable, very important, and is a great skill to have as well.
Awesome. Well, Ken, thank you so much for speaking at the DATAcated conference. Really appreciate you taking the time. And like I said, if you have time to go address some of these comments and questions, they're really flowing in. A lot of questions for you. And guys, go check out the hashtag 66 Days of Data. Definitely follow Ken on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube, obviously, where if you're not following him there yet. But Ken, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. The conference was incredible. And any overflow questions, feel free to, again, just post them on one of my YouTube videos, and I will respond to it there. Again, that's the best way for me to respond. It's where I organize everything.
Yeah,
I like it. I like being busy, though.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you again.
Okay, this officially concludes day one of the DATAcated conference. I am so thankful for all the speakers that have taken the time to provide their presentations. Really thankful for you guys for sticking around for, it's a little bit over 3 hours at this point. And it's been the longest and shortest 3 hours of my life in a way, where it's long because I've been standing and there's so much pressure, but it's short because I don't want it to end at the same time, because I think we're all having a really great time here. Quick reminder, if you have not yet officially registered for the conference, to hop on over to storybydata.com/DATAcated conference, or just go to storybydata.com and officially sign up. This will enable you to get all of the recordings. I'm going to package up each speaker's session into a specific recording if you want to, watch something that maybe you were multitasking during, or if you want to catch up if you didn't catch every session today. It also will include you in the raffles for all the fun giveaway prizes and some of the swag that we're giving away as part of the conference. All right, what can you expect to hear tomorrow? Well, tomorrow is day 2. We're going to talk about exploring trends in machine learning and AI. And then the day after, it's all about data storytelling, really that last mile of data analytics. So as I wrap up, I just want to say thank you again. If you found these conversations valuable, and you just want to let me know that you found it valuable, if you can comment DATAcated in the comments from whatever platform you're tuning in from, that will just show me that this was valuable for you and you found it informative, hopefully entertaining and engaging. And I will see everybody bright and early tomorrow morning. So thank you again, and stay DATAcated.